Chapter 176. In the distance, a faint light penetrates the fog on the sea and shines near the horizon. The captain was giving orders loudly. Sailors climbed up and down the three tall masts, busy fiddling with the rigging and the thick purple sails. Below, the oarsmen sit beside two long rows of rows and paddle hard. The deck creaked and tilted to one side, and the three-masted sailing ship Green Blood turned to right rudder and prepared to enter the port. Ariane Martell grew up in Falling Water Gardens. The sea has always been with her memory. But looking at the sea from the Flowing Water Garden and looking at the sea from the middle of the sea are completely different scenes. In the past, he only saw the gentle side of the sea, but these days he has seen the true power of the sea. In a few days' journey, Alan followed the fleet from Sun's Pair, crossed the narrow sea from the Stepstone Islands, and then went north along the coast, always keeping the land within sight, passing Tyrosh and Mir in the free trade city. Finally arrived in Pentos. In order to keep her whereabouts secret and prevent King's Landing from learning about the Martell family's plan, Ariane was secretly removed from the merchant ship owned by the Martell family. This trip took almost a month, during which we encountered storms and pirates. Finally the fleet arrived safely. Now, Ariane can finally see the Pentos she has been waiting for. In fact, despite her reluctance, Yalian finally agreed to her father's request and went to Pentos to become one of the 650 saints of the Dragon God Church. Although this contained a sense of responsibility for the family, the real reason was that he was attracted by his father's description of the divine envoy of the Dragon God Church. The only person she had to serve as the saint. According to Prince Oberon's subsequent letter, the envoy was indeed a handsome man. According to Oberon's recollections, his appearance was far superior to that of Prince Rhaegar, who was famous for his handsomeness, and was completely in line with Ariane's preferences. Yes, in today's terms, Ariane is a beauty control. In addition, the divine envoy also possesses powerful power. He can build stone platforms on the ground with his wave of hands, and can also control fire and ice. What's even more shocking is that Oberon also heard drunken warriors from Slack of Dopentos mention that they had seen the Lord God transform from a human into a dragon, and then from a dragon into a human. When they are sober, these soldiers will never admit this, and they keep it secret. When I learned this, Alan reluctantly agreed to his father's request. On the dock, surrounded by several guards from Pentos, Melisandre was waiting there early. In his opinion, Ariane Martell is more than just a beautiful woman. It also means a coast that can provide landings, sufficient food and grass, and a constant supply of soldiers. Originally, according to Ariane's status, even if she was not received with the etiquette of a crown prince, at least she should be treated with the etiquette of an envoy from another country. Just a few guards are not enough. There must be at least a guard of honor that can be formed into a queue. It is also best for Daenerys's top officials to make a symbolic appearance. But the cooperation between Daenerys and the Martell family is top secret after all. Although Westeros is not very sensitive to the intelligence of Essos continent, and King Robert is now deep in the wine pool and meat forest, and has no vigilance at all, but it is always right to be cautious. However, in order to show importance, Melisandre still went there in person. After the merchant ship docked, Ariane stepped down from the string board. She wore sand snakeskin sandals with shoelaces tied up to her thighs. Her jet black hair was curled up into small curls and fell down her back. There was also a sun-shaped copper headdress on her forehead. Ariane looked very much like her. Her mother was only 5 feet 2 inches, but under her jewel-encrusted belt and her loose purple-yellow silk satin robe that fluttered in the wind, she had a graceful and rounded female body. "Your Royal Highness, welcome to your arrival." Seeing Ariane's arrival, Melisandre immediately greeted Shangdui. As usual, she was dressed in white from head to toe, but it was not a ceremonial robe, just a casual dress with long sleeves and cuts on the top, revealing a darker blood-red shirt underneath. There is a red gold collar around her throat that is tighter than any maester's chain, with a large ruby embedded in it, and she holds a golden dragon-patterned scepter in her hand. Her hair was a polished deep reddish copper color, shining in the sunlight. Even her eyes are red, but her skin is white and smooth, flawless, like fresh cream. Her figure is elegant and slender, taller than most knights, with plump breasts and a slender waist. A heart-shaped face. Once a man's eyes stop on her, it is difficult to move away, even Ariane. "Thank you, Ms. Melisandre. I didn't expect that the Pope of the Dragon God religion would greet me personally. I'm really scared." Ariane nodded to Melisandre. Although she had never met Melisandre, she had learned about her standard scepter and ruby necklace from her uncle. In order to prevent Ariane from making any mistakes, Austrian Balin thoughtfully told his niece everything he knew about Daenerys's rule and ministers in the letter. In the past, Ariane might have treated you like a sage figure like Melisandre. Scoff. But now he doesn't dare to show any disrespect to it. Because he has truly mastered divine speed. But... yes, it makes Ylien care. Not really. Yeah, it's magic. Melisandre. But this. An extremely bustling yet well-organized port. Yes, Ariane has never seen such a bustling port, as if all the ships in the world have gathered here. They are large in size and small in size, and they are lined up in rows. Some are large merchant ships belonging to large chambers of commerce such as the 13 Giants and the Tourmaline Brotherhood, and there are also small flat-bottomed boats belonging to small businessmen. But no matter where these ships come from, whether they belong to the Aquaman of Bravos, or to the Iron Islands with their iron fleet, they all obeyed the instructions of the port guards and lined up neatly in the harbor. Close to the seaside is a trading market of huge amounts, day and night. Wine cellars, warehouses, and gambling houses are scattered on both sides of the road, but surprisingly there is no chaos here at all. Neatness and cleanliness are the characteristics of this port, and even the entire city. Ariane often sees people wearing yellow clothes and green clothes. People in vests clean the dirt on the ground at any time, and the drainage channels on both sides of the road lead all the sewage into the sea. The port of Pentos has now replaced Karth and become the largest port in the known world. After noticing Ariane's eyes, Melisandre explained, "The envoy of God not only brought us, it has performed great miracles and brought us many technologies that are far beyond ordinary people. Including cheap and beautiful glass and porcelain, cement that can quickly build houses, mellow spirits, soap locust that can be easily cleaned, and the price has been reduced by several 10 times as much cloth." Relying on these low-priced but high-quality goods, Pentos immediately became the richest city in the world. It naturally has its current prosperity. Now, the divine messenger has also invented a kind of paper made from grass and trees. These papers are 100 times whiter than parchment. But they are cheaper than today's cloth. In addition, the divine messenger has also invented a printing method. Technology. He plans to use paper and printing technology to produce a large number of cheap books so that everyone can have the opportunity to learn knowledge. In the future, even farmers will be able to afford books. The tone in which Melisandre told all this was quite enthusiastic, and anyone could hear the reverence from her heart. Ah, this Lord God envoy is indeed quite wise and great. Ylien praised. She really admired such a divine envoy, who not only possessed magical powers, but also had wisdom that no mortal could match. But for some reason, the image of an old bachelor appeared in her mind. She shook her head and put the image behind her. During the march, Ariane saw guards on horses or on foot more than once. These guards all wore strong and beautiful breastplates, held sharp weapons, were tall and strong, and formed an orderly formation. It's eye-catching. Today, the military system of the 7 countries in Westeros is similar to that of the European Middle Ages. Except for the Night Watch Corps on the Great Wall, there are few organized professional armies. Among them, the largest number of Golden Robe Guards in Junlin City is only 2,000. Large families like the Lannister, Stark, and Martell, to which Ariane belongs, normally have no more than 500 standing soldiers, and they are scattered throughout the territory. For young nobles of Ariane's generation who have never experienced war personally, seeing this army wearing uniform armor and equipped with swords and guns is indeed quite shocking. Especially for Ariane, a noble with considerable political ambitions and talents, nothing can embody strength more than a powerful army. What's even more exaggerated is that almost all of them wear metal armor. These breastplates are integrated and there are almost no traces of riveting. These armors are very beautiful. I have never seen armors of this style. Ylien sighed consciously or unconsciously. Your Highness Princess, you have indeed noticed the key point. Melisandre saw her purpose, smiled slightly, and said as if explaining and showing off, this kind of breastplate is not entirely made by manpower. God's envoy, the adults, have created some machines that can use water power, wind power, or animal power. The power these machines can produce is far beyond that of Superman, and the most important part of this armor is made by mechanical hammering. Today, there are more than 100,000 Pentos, a standing army of men, but we will soon be able to equip each of them with metal armor. 100,000 people. This number deeply frightened Ariane. He had never thought about what it would be like if 100,000 people put on shining metal armor. Even if these were just breastplates. In Westeros only nobles and their own soldiers have the opportunity to wear iron armor. Later, before arriving at the Dragon God Temple, everything Arianne saw and heard along the way deeply shocked the girl. At the moment, her 1.0 envy for Daenerys has reached its peak. She had indeed envied Daenerys before, because the girl was only 13 years old. But she has already accomplished what she wanted to do but failed to do at the age of 21. She can dominate a party, hold power, and decide her own destiny without taking orders from anyone. But now, what Arianne envies even more is that Daenerys has the help of someone like the Dragon God Church, or the Dragon God Envoy, behind her. He truly believed that Daenerys alone had the ability to govern Pentos prosperously. But she never believed that Daenerys alone could make Pentos what it is today, richer and more powerful than the entire era. He believes that there must be some supernatural power behind Pentos today. And the source of all this is the so-called Divine Messenger. She was looking forward to meeting the divine envoys of the Dragon God cult more and more. The last 2 chapters today have exceeded 3,000 words, so you can just count me as the 4th update, okay? In addition, please give me monthly votes, flowers, and collections. It's a new month and the list will be reset. Please support me so that more people can see this book. Thank you all. Chapter 177. Arianne originally thought that what she saw in Pentos was exaggerated enough. However, when she actually came to the Dragon God Temple in Pentos, she realized that she had underestimated the Dragon God cult. Yes, just from the tall appearance of the Dragon God Temple, the unprecedented gorgeous architectural style and the numerous towers, she could tell that the Dragon God Church was indeed very different from any other religion in the world. And when he entered the temple, she realized that she had indeed entered the realm of gods. It is different from any other religion that is secretive and pretends to be mysterious. The Dragon God Church directly displayed their god side in front of mortals. Arianne just followed Melisandre as she walked forward, passing a fountain erupting with sourceless water, entering a door that opened completely automatically, passing by a lobby illuminated by thousands of candles floating in the air, and walking through a corridor filled with moving portraits, climbing up the constantly changing staircase 837, and finally walking along an empty corridor to the end. At the end of the corridor is a huge amount of dragon stone sculpture. Just when Arianne was still wondering why Melisandre had brought her to this dead end, the dragon-shaped stone sculpture actually spoke. Password. It said, with a sound like the friction of stones in its voice. The password is the demon lost. Melisandre replied calmly, obviously used to all this. The dragon stone statue nodded, then separated from the middle and split into 2 halves. A portal appeared in the chasm in front of them. This is the room where Lord God Envoy usually stays. You can only enter if you tell the correct password, otherwise you will be attacked by the stone statue. Believe me, even the magic mountain has no power to fight back against it. Melisandre turned around head reminded Arianne. The mountain is the nickname of Sir Gregor Clegane. He is loyal to the Lannister family. He is famous for his tall size and unparalleled ferocity. He is nearly 8 feet tall. The shoulders are broad and thick, and the arms are as thick as small tree trunks. He weighs about 30 stones and is full of muscles. His weapon is a 2-handed giant sword, but he can use it with only one hand. During the War of Robert's Rebellion, it was he who broke into the royal nursery on the orders of Tywin Lannister and smashed Prince Rhaegar's infant son, Prince Aegon, with his head against the wall and threw him to death. Before the child's blood and brains were dry, he RD and killed Aegon's mother, Arianne's aunt, Princess Elia Martell. In other words, he is one of the blood feuds of the Martell family. Arianne definitely knows this person quite well. Melisandre compares him with him to emphasize the powerful nature of the Dragon God Church. Judging from the results, her goal was achieved, and Arianne's eyes were clearly in awe. After entering, Arianne found that the room was larger than she had imagined, and the decoration was quite gorgeous. There were many furniture and decorative items that she had never seen before. However, Arianne didn't care about all this, because her attention was completely attracted by the man sitting in the center of the room. Just by virtue of his handsome appearance and mysterious and wise temperament, she immediately recognized the person in front of her as the person she would serve in the future, the God Envoy. The moment she saw him, Arianne found that her face-controlling heart had begun to roar crazily. Yes, he is the person I want to find. As the heir of Dorne in the Seven Kingdoms, and as Arianne, she has naturally seen many handsome men and beautiful women. However, at the moment she realized that her uncle's description of the divine messenger in the letter was true. No, the person in front of me, both in appearance and temperament, is neither higher nor lower than what Prince Oberon said. She was somewhat glad that she made the right choice in front of her father. After a while, Ariane broke free from her addiction. Only then did she notice that there was a girl next to the man. The girl was as petite as her, but much younger, even a little immature. She had golden silver hair, violet pupils, and a golden red one-handed sword burning with golden flames hung on her waist. Ariane immediately recognized the identity of the woman in front of her. She is the current master of Pentos, the destined king, the reincarnation of Azor Ahai, Daenerys Targaryen. And this woman was actually surrounded by 3 small beasts, one red, one green and one gold, covered in scales and with wings on their backs. Take another closer look. Ariane then understood that these were the legendary 3 young dragons hatched from petrified dragon eggs. The dragon, which had disappeared for hundreds of years and existed only in legends, appeared in front of her. She looked at the man and woman, as if they were arguing about something, and the 3 little dragons were either lying on Daenerys' back or hiding at her feet, sticking out their heads to look at the man. Looking trembling. As Ariane approached, she heard Daenerys' angry voice. "The son in my life, you are too cruel to them," she said to the man with some reproach. "The 3 of them are just newborn children. I definitely know that they are just children." The man shook his head, "But they are also 3 dragons. With the scales on their bodies, if I just hit them like this, they won't even feel the pain. So what? If they are dragons, can you beat them like this? If they are dragons, can you beat them like this? How could you do this to 3 little girls? Really, isn't it just burning your test subjects? Well, at the moment, the petite Daenerys is like a female dragon protecting her cubs. 3 little girls." The man helplessly held his forehead. "The 3 little girls you mentioned will grow taller than the city towers of Pentos in the future, and can eat more than a dozen cows at a meal. One mouth can completely collapse an army. Yes, yes. My daughters will definitely be very powerful when they grow up," Daenerys said proudly, and then changed her tone. "But so what? As long as I am here, who wants to bully them? No, not even your father." Dad, the man was a little dumbfounded. "That's right. Daenerys analyzed as if definitely, it was your flame that activated them and gave them new life. Moreover, the only one who can be regarded as their elder of the same clan now is you. In addition, you are the only one who can be regarded as their elder. You are still with me." The voice was a little soft here. Ariane didn't hear it, but she guessed what was going on, and couldn't help but curled her lips. "In short, who else is their father besides you? Who can do it? Right, Talon Ixia, Alex Thassa, and Asira." The golden, red, and green baby dragons popped their heads up one after another when they heard their mother calling their names and nodded obediently. Okay, you say so, right." The man's tone was a little helpless, but 2.4 what made Ariane a little jealous was that there was a bit of pampering in his tone. Sure enough, their relationship was abnormal. Ariane's suspicion deepened. But when she found that Melisandre next to her looked accustomed to it, and even had a happy expression on her face, she was still a little unbelievable. Could it be that even Pope Melisandre? Immediately, her eyes looked at Melisandre with some hostility. Readers who know World of Warcraft will definitely think after seeing these 3 names, I have a bold idea. Here, I want to tell you that the idea is correct. In addition, the dragons in A Song of Ice and Fire originally had no gender and were completely parthenogenetic. I will retain and transform this attribute to completely avoid certain plots, so please rest assured. Chapter 178. Hee. Daenerys saw the man's default expression and immediately smiled happily. This innocent girl's appearance completely lacked the heroic spirit and awe of the arrow-drawing ceremony a few days ago. Compared with Mei Liang, Merlin, I am relatively successful at this point. Seeing the other party's expression, Yeting was a little proud. After all, although he was also cultivating a king, he did not want her to suffer the same fate as the Lion King. Daenerys smiled and waved to the man, "Then I will take them away. By the way, this matter ends here. You are not allowed to bully them afterwards. Do you understand?" I know, it's true." The man waved his hand helplessly. "I really spoiled you. It's only been a month, and the timid and helpless girl back then has completely disappeared. Yes. You have completely changed me." As she spoke, Daenerys' tone suddenly became serious. She looked into Yeting's eyes and said with some affection, "That's why I said, you are the one in my life Sunday." "Ah, Why on earth did I come here to eat dog food from a 13-year-old girl? She may not know this word. I'm so sorry to be an old maid at the age of 21. Ariane felt a little uncomfortable next to her, and she suddenly discovered that her future competitors were really extremely powerful. After Daenerys finished speaking, she led the 3 little dragons and walked towards Ariane. The little dragons seemed to have discovered that they had escaped, so they stopped showing fear and started jumping up and down lively. When she came to Ariane, Daenerys smiled and greeted her, "You must be Princess Ariane Martell from Dorne. You are really a beauty. I hope you can have a great time in Pentos, but it looks like you are temporarily busy, so we will see you again." At this time, she looked quite confident and mature, completely different from the young girl who was acting coquettishly just now. Then, she nodded to Melisandre familiarly, and then left the room behind them. Then, Melisandre brought Ariane to Yeting, introduced him briefly, and then left calmly. Before she left an intriguing word to Ariane in a friendly way. "The God Envoy seems quite satisfied with you. I hope I can get along well with you in the future, whether as a colleague or..." Before Ariane could react, she opened the room immediately. Soon, only Yeting and Princess Lene were left in the room. From the conversation just now, Ariane discovered that Yeting was not actually the enigmatic envoy she imagined. On the contrary, apart from mastering powerful power, he is similar to ordinary people in many ways. She prides herself on her ability to negotiate. You can quickly establish a good relationship with the other party and satisfy the other party. However, when she faced the Divine Envoy alone, she realized that she was no longer the fearless attitude and bold character she had before. It was as if she was facing some terrible monster. The greetings I had prepared were stuck in my throat and I couldn't say them out at all. It's no wonder that Yeting brought the power of science and magic to the world that transcended the times. These two forces, one acting on the secular world and the other acting on faith, have brought unimaginable changes to the mortals in this world. And Ariane, who has experienced the power of these two aspects along the way, will naturally feel great pressure when facing the creators of all these. In the end, Yeting had to speak first. "You are Ariane Martell, the Princess of Dorne," he said warmly. "Yes, Lord Divine Envoy, it's nice to meet you," Ariane replied softly, trying hard to put on a gentle, ladylike smile on her face. Then, she knelt down gracefully and performed a ritual that could only be performed on a king. "It seems that she has fully accepted her fate." Yeting held her hands up, and Ariane felt a soft but firm force, lifting her up invisible. But the Divine Envoy in front of her had no physical contact with her at all. This made her feel once again how unfathomable the person in front of her was. However, she still suppressed her nervousness and expressed her gratitude to Yeting. "You are very beautiful, Your Highness Princess, even more beautiful than I imagined." Looking at Ariane's gorgeous and refreshing attire, Yeting had already tasted meat. "I couldn't help but want to whistle." "Thank you, as long as you are satisfied." Hearing this comment, Ariane felt a little happy in her heart. The outfit she wears today was carefully selected when she was in Dorne. She believed that no man would fall in love with her in such a dress. However, she soon discovered that Yeting's appreciation for her only stopped there, and he did not do anything more excessive, although he had the right to do so. This made Ariane sigh at the other party's demeanor but also a little unconvinced. "Am I unattractive? He didn't even touch me." But this is definitely the case. Not to mention Yeting's own willpower, just speaking of the image he currently plays, even if he is the envoy of Aphrodite, he will not do anything when he comes up. Those who are close are not inferior, and those who are far away are resentful. This is probably what people say. However, such dissatisfaction made her start to slightly ignore the pressure Yeting had put on her. So, soon they were able to chat normally. Ariane seized the opportunity and curiously asked Yeting about every extraordinary thing she saw in Pentos. She even asked some more confidential questions. For example, how are the glass and porcelain of Pentos made? Why can the soap locust in Pentos produce foam? What is the legendary machine that can make the price of cloth dozens of times cheaper? What exactly is it? Principle? How is Pentos armor made? There are also some questions about paper and printing. Yeting didn't use other words to talk to him because he was just here for the first time and didn't gain trust. Instead, he answered the question for Ariane, who was as curious as a baby, as if he knew everything. Anyway, to him, all this is nothing, and he himself did not conquer the world entirely by relying on these, so he has nothing to hide from the girl who may be by his side in the future. However, there was some physics and chemistry knowledge in it that Ariane couldn't understand at all, so she had to put on an expression that said, "Although I don't know what you are talking about, you seem to be very powerful." Finally, when Ariane had completely satisfied her curiosity, she sighed, "You are indeed a very wise and great envoy. You do not use magic, but use knowledge to make this world a better place. Being more beautiful, as you said, is the opportunity for the world to change. However, you are indeed different from what I imagined. You are a little too real. So real that he doesn't look like a god, but like a human being. I thought that divine envoys were beings with no emotions at all except faith." These words indeed seemed a bit bold. After all, if he was arranged like this in front of a divine envoy, he might be punished by God. But through the small talk just now, Ariane thought she had sensed some of Yeting's temperament. The other person was more accommodating than he expected. What's the point of being a god if you don't have emotions? If you become a god and you only know faith, and if you become a strong person you only pursue strength and lose emotions, then such a god or person is just a slave of faith and power. Having the freedom of any emotion should be the real goal. These words were not only an answer to Ariane, but also Yeting's request for himself. Hearing such an answer, Ariane smiled sweetly, and looked at the man in front of her with eyes that seemed to be dripping with water. In fact, Yeting also felt a little strange about Ariane like this. Most of the women in Dorne have fiery personalities. Ariane Martell, as the heir of Dorne, is even less likely to act like an ordinary lady. In the original work, in order to achieve her own goals, she even dared to scheme against her own father and sacrifice her own body. If we could find a person in the history of the earth who is similar to her, it would be Cleopatra. Because of this, Yeting felt quite strange in his heart when he saw Ariane looking knowledgeable and soft-spoken. Another thing is the joy in Ariane's tone. That kind of happy feeling is completely unlike someone who was forced to become a saint. 183 In the original book, she even tried to escape from Sun's pair due to marriage problems, and also tried to seduce someone who was about the same age as her uncle. She did not look like the kind of woman who would be willing to go to the church and become a nun. In fact, Yeting himself doesn't understand women. Originally, Ariane might have been very dissatisfied with such a fate. But the moment he saw Yeting's appearance, all dissatisfaction immediately disappeared. Not to mention, in addition to possessing powerful power and unfathomable wisdom, Yeting is not a real messenger and has no emotions. Judging from the conversation between him and Ariane himself, and the Yeting witnessed by Ariane, how to get along with Daenerys. This already satisfied her to the fullest. In other words, the woman in front of me has been given to me for nothing. However, Yeting immediately understood how fast this woman gave everything. Because, she has now opened her belt, and her loose robe has fallen to her feet. Yeting immediately enjoyed the exotic scenery. Despite being petite, Ariane does have a hot body. How do you say that? Although she has a childlike face, her key parts are unexpectedly plump. Ariane came directly to Yeting and sat boldly on his lap. At the moment, Yeting was confused. Are all women in this world like this? Daenerys gave it to her for nothing on the first night they met, Melisandre also gave it to her for nothing on the first night they met, and now Ariane, she even just met her not long ago. However, Ye no longer had the energy to think. He reached out, grabbed Ariane's armpits, and gently lifted her up like a kitten. Dragon has never been a passive creature. Recently I was watching Ordinary Profession Makes the World's Strongest and Let's Do It Again. Lord Demon King, and the heroines were really competing for nothing. So. Chapter 179. After Ariane arrived in Pentos, Daenerys, who had formed an alliance with Dorne, completely lost her worries, and as a result, her power ushered in a rapid development. She gradually accepted the allegiance of many governors in the Free Trade City. Then, the Church of the Dragon God and the Dragon Blood Chamber of Commerce from Pentos began to station themselves in Lys, Qohor, Norvos, Myr, Tyrosh, and Valen. Tis and Loras, a large number of governors in these city-states have joined the Dragon Blood Merchant Guild and converted to the Church of the Dragon God. In addition, the armies of these cities have also carried out a series of major changes and reorganizations, openly and secretly. Training, and even priests from the Dragon God Church are stationed in these armies. At the same time, these cities also began to hire a newly established Dothraki mercenary army to help defend the city and escort the caravans. This mercenary army was newly established, and all the warriors in the army were Dothraki retired from Pentos. Lark soldiers, and they are all fanatical followers of the dragon god cult. In this way, Daenerys overtly and secretly controlled the 8 free trade cities. The economy, army, and faith of the 8 cities were all in the hands of her and the dragon god cult. They were only one step away from actual rule. Far away. However, she did not directly declare her rule over these cities, not because she was unwilling, but because Yeting pointed out that the current political situation of the 7 kingdoms of Westeros has reached a point where it is about to break out. Like dominoes, the situation of the unification of the 7 countries collapsed. By that time, the 7 kingdoms, which are deep in the abyss of war, will have no ability to control the situation on the Essos continent. Once the war starts, the ambitious people of the 7 kingdoms will be like riding a bull with its tail set on fire. The direction of the 7 kingdoms is completely uncontrollable. After the entire 7 kingdoms are reduced to a puddle of mud and the war potential is greatly consumed, Daenerys can enter the game from Dorne, sweep across the 7 kingdoms with a devastating force, and unify Weiss in one fell swoop. Tello. But now, she must lie dormant and not show her fangs too much, making the 7 kingdoms too vigilant. Once the 7 kingdoms realize the threat of Daenerys before the chaos, then they will unite and internal conflicts will turn into external conflicts. In this case, she would have to fight a tough battle across the sea outside her home court, and challenge the entire army of the 7 countries. Although she could win, it would probably be a tragic victory. Moreover, it will also gain the hatred of the people of the 7 countries during the war, which is very detrimental to future rule. Zhu Yuanzhang's strategy back then was very good. Build walls high, accumulate grain widely, and become king slowly. Now. But you mean you have to adopt such a strategy? Although King Robert is now fatuous, the dignitaries of the 7 kingdoms are not sensitive to the intelligence of Essos. But once Daenerys unified the 8 free trade city-states in one fell swoop and mastered huge amounts of power that was almost equal to that of the 7 kingdoms, then no matter how stupid Robert was, he would still be extremely vigilant. And those pretenders to the throne will definitely postpone their actions, otherwise they will only take advantage of others. Until now, it seems that Daenerys's move has been quite successful. Although she controlled Pentos, became the reincarnation of Azor Ahai, and hatched 3 dragons. However, King's Landing's reaction to this incident was not great. They only used several assassination methods, but Daenerys, protected by magic, easily escaped. On the other hand, Daenerys is also taking action, and the Dragon God Church and his Chamber of Commerce are gradually penetrating Westeros. As for the Church of the Dragon God, although the belief in the 7 gods of Westeros is quite strong, the Church of the Dragon God quickly established a firm foothold with its endless miracles. A large number of nobles have abandoned the 7 gods and turned to the more efficacious Church of the Dragon God. However, compared to the Church of Dragon God, it was the Chamber of Commerce under Daenerys that reaped a richer harvest. In the recent period, the Free Trade City-State has established a new organization called the Free Trade Bank. This organization does not do any business or produce any goods. They have opened stores called banks in all big cities. Any businessman can deposit his gold and silver wealth into a bank in any place, and withdraw his wealth at any other outlet through the credentials given by the bank. This greatly reduces the inconvenience and risks caused by businessmen carrying too many financial reports when doing business. Therefore, as soon as the Free Trade Bank appeared, it was strongly welcomed by businessmen. When such a banking organization first appeared, it would inevitably be suspected by others, but the background of the Free Trade Bank was very unusual. Its shareholders included most of the governors of the entire Free Trade City. Each of these governors can be said to be as rich as the country. If no one of them spends a sum of money, even if it is only 1/10 of their wealth, combining all the wealth together will be a huge astronomical figure. Therefore, no one will believe that the Free Trade Bank cannot provide money. In addition, Free Trade Bank is also engaged in loan business. Anyone can lend a sum of money in a Free Trade Bank with certain collateral, and the interest rate is much lower than that of general usury. The background of Free Trade Bank allows him to ensure that in most cases the arrears can be recovered. Definitely, on the surface, the Free Trade Bank has nothing to do with Daenerys. But in fact, all the top executives in the Free Trade Bank are either Daenerys's subordinates, or her die-hard loyalists or fanatical followers of the Dragon God cult. In short, the Free Trade Bank is completely in her hands, and even other governors have little say as shareholders. This is also a means for Daenerys to control these governors. At the same time, this bank has replaced the status of the Iron Gold Bank with its larger amount of funds, more advanced systems, and more perspectives. The Iron Bank is the most important bank in Braavos. Definitely, these primitive banks can only be regarded as charging usury. It is very rich and often lends money to outsiders. Among its reeds are the kings of the Seven Kingdoms. While all free cities have their own banks, the Iron Bank is wealthier and more powerful than all the other banks combined. It has a terrible reputation when it comes to collecting debts. When princes or kings default on their debts, or are foolish enough to disrespect their contracts with the Iron Bank, new princes or kings, with financial assistance from the Iron Bank, spring up. These new princes or kings would then have to recognize the previous debts and repay the money they had borrowed from the Iron Bank to win the throne, lest they suffer the same fate as their predecessors. Today, of the 9 free trade city-states, only Braavos is still independent. It was clear that he was going to fight against Daenerys, and Braavos, as the most powerful free trade city-state, its source of wealth mainly comes from navigation and the Iron Bank. Now the business of the Iron Bank is due to the Free Trade Bank. It suffered a devastating blow, and in terms of navigation, it could only have a temporary advantage at best. On the one hand, the knowledge possessed by Yeting allows Daenerys to quickly build more powerful and advanced merchant ships and battleships. On the other hand, although the Aquaman of Braavos has a terrifying fleet, facing Dragon, these wooden fleets are nothing. Dragon only needs to breathe dragon breath in the air, which is enough to annihilate any fleet. Now the Free Trade Bank has become the creditor of quite a few nobles in the 7 countries, including the owner of Robert's car himself. In fact, under Robert's rule, the treasury of the 7 kingdoms had long been heavily in debt. After becoming king, Robert did not want to worry about political affairs, left everything to the royal council, and squandered the money left by Ares II to satisfy his various material desires. Just recently, his first handle of the king, the prime minister, who was also his adoptive father, John Arryn, unexpectedly died of illness, so Robert led a large royal team, travelled a long distance to Winterfell to meet the last person he could trust. Ed Stark, the Warden of the North and the adopted son of Jon Arryn with Robert. Ned had not changed much from the last time they met 9 years ago, but Robert had become fat and frail due to indulging in wine and **X, and he was a completely different person. As his good friend, Ed Stark had to take over the position of Prime Minister. Only then did he realize that the royal family already owed a huge debt of 6 million gold dragons. His creditors included his Queen Cersei's natal family, the Lannister family, and the $7 million family. The Tyrell family of the River Bend, one of the kingdoms, the Church of the Seven, Tyrosia's trading house and now the Free Trade Bank. By lending money to the king, the Free Trade Bank quickly established a presence in the 7 kingdoms and opened branches everywhere. Through the Free Trade Bank, Daenerys was able to learn detailed information about Westeros, and able to use wealth to support the struggle for power in Westeros, and even control the future civil war of the Seven Sevens. And what about King Robert? He didn't know anything about it, he was still addicted to justing and material enjoyment, and completely ignored his debt situation. In the name of welcoming the new Prime Minister, he ordered a grand and extravagant justing meeting. However, Yeting knew that the entire plot of A Song of Ice and Fire actually started from here. Yes, time has entered 298 AC, by the way, AC refers to Aegon's Chronicle, does Wang Zhao refer to Daenerys' ancestor, the first Targaryen to conquer the 7 kingdoms? The calendar used by the maesters and educated men of Westeros in the year Aegon the Conqueror was crowned in Old Town. Now, in the 7 kingdoms, the seeds of chaos have long been planted and will soon erupt. Even King Robert himself and princes like Ed Stark will die under political conspiracy, and then the battle for succession, the Battle of the 5 Kings. This is Daenerys' chance. Just recently, Yeting's research has come to an end. Through research on Daenerys' bloodline and the bloodline of Tayron Ixia, Alex Tassa, and Asira, he has found the dragon anima. Gus method. Therefore, he planned to leave the continent of Essos temporarily and go to King's Landing to have some fun before returning to the world of Harry Potter. After all, I came to the world of A Song of Ice and Fire and met Daenerys and her 3 dragons, who represent the dragon family, but did not meet the Stark family, which represents ice. What? In addition, he also thought about adding fuel to this huge amount of conspiracy to make the world more chaotic. There are 2 more 3,000 plus chapters and more than 9,000 words, so count them as 4 updates. Chapter 180. According to Daenerys and Yeting's plan, while Yeting went to King's Landing to wreak havoc on the 7 kingdoms, Daenerys also had a mission here, which was to sweep across the Dothraki Sea. After Yeting burned Khal Drogo and his men to death with dragon fire, Daenerys took over Khal Drogo's Kayla shaman. This was also the most powerful Kayla shaman in the entire Dothraki Sea. Any other Kayla Sardu is no match for Drogo. And now, based on this Kalayza, Daenerys has established the most powerful cavalry regiment in the entire Essos and even Westeros. As a nomadic people who live by raiding, the Dothraki are originally born cavalry, and their riding skills are superior to any knights. But they also have a shortcoming, that is, they mainly have light cavalry and no heavy cavalry. Definitely there is a reason for this. Dothraki believe that wearing armor is a cowardly act. They usually wear painted leather vests and horsehair leggings. Their weapons are also scimitars, longbows, and whips. Such cavalry they are basically invincible in field battles, but they are slightly deficient in attacking difficulties. In this regard, the Dothraki have learned a painful lesson. The most famous one is the Battle of Qohor that took place more than 400 years ago. Temikal, the most powerful Dothraki sea at that time, led his Kalayza to attack Kor, one of the free cities. The Qohor hired 2 mercenary regiments, the Bright Banners and the Second Sons, and subsequently purchased 3,000 Unsullied. When the Unsullied arrived, Qohor's army was already 397 in pieces. But after the Unsullied formed their formation in front of the city gate, the Dothraki charged them 18 times, but still failed to defeat the Unsullied army. After the battle, a total of 12,000 Dothraki, including Tima Kazuo himself, were killed on the spot. The Unsullied are typical heavy infantry, definitely, they call themselves light infantry. They are castrated slave warriors who were trained in Astapor, a city in Slavers Bay, since they were young. They are characterized by absolute obedience to their masters and face-to-face they are fearless in war. Their equipment includes daggers, shields, spears and spiked helmets. They fight in a phalanx similar to the ancient Roman era. When defending, they defend against arrows through a strict shield array and use trees like a forest. The spears resisted the cavalry attack. Faced with such an opponent, even the Dothraki were helpless. However, since joining Daenerys's command and believing in the dragon god cult, the fighting mode of these Dothraki has changed. They wear leather armor and light armor made from the assembly line of Pentos, which has greatly improved defensive power. In addition, Daenerys also selected a group of young warriors who had firm beliefs and were willing to obey strict discipline. They wore heavy plate armor, replaced their weapons with lances, and began to train modern heavy cavalry tactics such as wall charges. The nomadic cavalry, which had almost no opponents in the first place, coupled with the equipment and heavy cavalry tactics produced by agricultural civilization almost industrialized, the chemical reaction between the two has long been formed. Now this cavalry is enough to sweep across the entire era. The cavalry regiment of Stos, whom Daenerys named the Dragon Wings. With such a group of cavalry, coupled with the infantry composed of Pentos, and the large and small mercenary groups who have taken refuge, Daenerys, who has such a powerful force, is ready to conquer the entire Dothraki Sea. According to Yeting's estimation, the 7 kingdoms will fall into chaos and civil war within a year. By that time, Daenerys should have completed the unification of the Dothraki Sea, and can turn to Slavers Bay to do what she wants. Doing something that took a long time, liberating the slaves in Slavers Bay. After that, it would definitely be the time for the Free Trade City to publicly announce its change of flag, then lead its troops across the narrow sea, land in Dorne, and counterattack the 7 kingdoms. After Daenerys secretly sent troops, Yeting also started his journey to Westeros. Everything in Pentos has been arranged, and the Church of the Dragon God has been handed over to Melisandre. Yeting has always been at ease. And the internal affairs of Pentos were handed over to Arianne. With her dedication and several months of getting along with her, she can now be regarded as someone he can trust. At this point, Yeting is still quite confident in his ability. Although Yalian himself is not as good as Danielle, she has great leadership and charisma, but her originally political skill and level of maneuvering are also quite good. She even completely surpasses Daenerys herself in terms of political struggle ability, although as a king she is not as good as Daenerys, but as Prime Minister, her methods of handling political affairs are much more mature than Daenerys. Therefore, Yeting himself disguised himself and boarded a merchant ship under Daenerys's flag to King's Landing incognito. The distance from Pentos to King's Landing is not that far. Rather, it is the closest free trade city to King's Landing. Within a week, the merchant ship arrived at the port of King's Landing. At the moment, Yeting was standing on the deck, looking at the entire Junlan city. 300 years ago, the highland in front of us was completely covered by forest, with only a few fishermen settling on the north bank of the Blackwater River, which flows fast and flows deep into the sea. Later, Daenerys' ancestor, Aegon the Conqueror, crossed the sea from Dragonstone. His army landed here, and then he built his first rough defense with wood and earth on the top of the highest hill. Fortress. Now, wherever Yeting could see, everything had become a prosperous urban area with mansions, pavilions, barns, brick warehouses, wooden hotels and market stalls, taverns, cemeteries and brothels, one after another. Even though he was still far away, he could still hear the noise in the fish market. Wide boulevards, winding streets, and alleys too narrow to accommodate two people walking side by side shuttle between buildings. The marble walls of St. Belle's Cathedral surround the top of the Vicenian hills, from which 7 crystal towers rise. On the hill of Rennes on the other side, there are the blackened ruins of the Dragon's Lair, the ruins of the huge collapsed dome, and the bronze door that has been closed for a century. Between the two hills, the Street of Silent Sisters is as straight as an arrow, surrounded by solid high walls. More than 100 docks line the waterfront, and countless ships are moored in the port. There was an endless stream of deep water fishing boats and river rafts, and boatmen were ploughing their poles to and from the Blackwater Bay. Yeting recognized that most of the merchant ships around were from Pentos, because their styles were very different from the medieval ships in this world. Yeting recognized them because their styles were all designed by him personally after imitating the Galen ships and schooners of the Earth. The mature designs of these two ships have been verified in the Earth's age of discovery. These merchant ships are constantly unloading various goods from Pentos. In addition, Yeting also saw a gorgeously decorated yacht moored next to a whaler with a deep draft and a hull covered in black tar. There are a dozen long and narrow golden warships upstream, the sails are rolled up, and the iron battering rams gently tap the water. Watching all this is the Red Keep on Aegon's Hill. It includes 7 huge drum towers with reinforced steel fortifications, a huge and cold fortress, a domed hall and a sealed bridge. The barracks, dungeon, and barn, as well as the thick parapets full of arrow holes, are all made of light red stone. Aegon the Conqueror ordered the castle to be built, and his son Maegor the Cruel completed it. After the construction was completed, he beheaded every mason, carpenter, and architect who participated in the construction of the city, vowing that only the descendants of the true dragon could master the secret of Longkai Fortress. Unexpectedly, today, the flag flying on the city wall is golden instead of jet black. The place where the 3-headed dragon once roared with anger has become the territory where the crowned stag of the Baratheon family gallops high. However, Yeting believes that the dragon's flames will burn here again, and soon the black dragon flag will fly here again. Chapter 181. After the new hand of the king Ed Stark arrived in King's Landing, the first royal meeting was held quickly. King Robert's royal council consisted of 4 important ministers. The first is the eunuch Varys, who serves as the intelligence chief in the Imperial Council and is actually the spy chief. He collects secrets through a network of intelligence woven by his little birds. Before Varys started his career, he had a good relationship with Illyrio Mopatis, the governor of Pentos who invested in Viserys and Daenerys. After he became a famous intelligence dealer in the Free Trade City, he was invited to the court by the suspicious Mad King Aerys II, and from then on he served as the chief intelligence officer. Later, Robert overthrew Aerys II, and he began to serve King Robert again. However, he seems to still have some loyalty to the Targaryen family, because he is part of Illyrio's plan to support Viserys. After Illyrio was burned to death and Daenerys established her rule in Pentos, under Yeting's prompting, Daenerys contacted the spy chief and cooperated with him. From this point of view, he still deserves some trust. But he actually knew nothing about Yeting's arrival. The second is Lord Renly, who is Robert's younger brother. He looks very similar to the young King Robert. He is tall and handsome. His black hair reaches his shoulders and is always neatly combed. He knows how to do it very well. The importance of his charm, his taste, and devotion in dressing are enough to put any important minister of the kingdom to shame. The third person is Peter Baelish, the king's finance minister, nicknamed Littlefinger. He was once a minor nobleman from the Five Fingers Peninsula and was adopted by Lord Hoster Tully of Riverrun. Ed Stark's wife, Hoster's daughter, Catherine Tully's childhood sweetheart, and has always been in love with her, but in the end Catherine married Ed. In addition, Catelyn's sister Lisa Tully was very obsessed with him, and she had an affair with him and became pregnant. In the end, Lord Hoster broke them up and married Lisa, who had lost her virginity, to the old and heirless Vale. Duke Jonaran, the former hand of the king and the adoptive father of Robert and Ed. The fourth is Grand Maester Pycelle. His bald head is covered with age spots, and a few sparse white hair hangs on both sides of his forehead. His bachelor's necklace is made of 24 kinds of metal pieces and hangs heavily from his neck to his chest. His snow-white beard flows down to his chest. In this era, bachelors shouldered various important responsibilities, including but not limited to pharmacists, magicians, diviners, stargazers, military and political advisors, and even played the roles of midwives and babysitters. However, Pycelle is not a national advisor who conscientiously abides by his oath. From time to time, he will secretly do some unruly things according to his own needs, such as causing a biased influence in political events. He has a special admiration for Lord Tywin. There are so many factions in just a royal council, which is enough to show how neglectful and unpopular Robert's rule was. He was surrounded by either idiots, conspirators, or sycophants, but everyone had their own little calculations. After Ed arrived, Robert's first task was to hold a grand justing tournament to celebrate the new Prime Minister's taking office. King Robert announced that the winner would be rewarded with 40,000 gold dragon coins, and the second place would be rewarded with 20,000 gold dragon coins. The winner of team close combat is also worth 20,000, and the winner of archery is worth 10,000. The bonus alone cost 90,000 gold dragon coins, and a large sum of money was also spent on banqueting guests, organizing martial arts competitions, etc. You know, 1 gold dragon coin is a soldier's military pay for a whole year, and a good set of armor costs 4 or 5 gold dragon coins. This incident made Ed very anxious. In addition, he also had to spend time investigating the death of his adoptive father Jon Arryn and dealing with his belongings. He believed that Jon's death contained a major conspiracy. In addition, he had to deal with the conflicts between her 2 daughters. He came to King's Landing on this trip and brought 2 of his 5 children, Sansa and Arya. The eldest daughter Sansa is engaged to Robert's son Prince Joffrey. This trip is to complete the marriage, while the second daughter is purely here to join in the fun. Sansa has been educated as a lady since she was a child. She has traditional feminine charm consistent with her noble origin, and has a strong interest in music, poetry, singing, dancing, and other female leisure activities such as embroidery. When she was young, she had an innocent romantic fantasy about handsome princes, noble knights, and love, and often dreamed of the love stories described in stories and songs. 0. Please give me flowers. However, Arya is a lively and energetic girl who likes fighting and exploring. This is the exact opposite of her well-behaved sister Sansa Stark, which puts the 2 sisters at odds. Ed once unexpectedly harvested a litter of 5 young dire wolves while hunting. Since Stark's family crest is the dire wolf, he asked each of his 5 children to adopt one. After they came from Winterfell on the way to King's Landing, Arya's dire wolf injured Prince Joffrey and fled, so the vicious Queen Cersei demanded that Sansa's dire wolf be used as the blame, and they lost their pet. The relationship between Sansa and Arya continued to be tense. She placed all the blame for the dire wolf's death on Arya. During Ed's subsequent investigation, he discovered that his adoptive father, who died suddenly of illness, had been studying a book, The Genealogy and History of the Main Nobles of the 7 Kingdoms, which included many descriptions of the Countess and their children, before his death, and had secretly interviewed him. He had passed Robert's eldest brother, Stannis Baratheon, and had planned to send his son to Stannis Fiefdom, Dragonstone, to be adopted by Stannis. As far as Ed knew, Jon and Stannis had never had a close relationship in the past, and these seemingly abnormal actions aroused his curiosity. In addition, Jon and Stannis once investigated the king's illegitimate son. Even so, he still did not figure out why Jon's desire to see the king's illegitimate son would cause his death. Even under such circumstances, the tournament was still held. For this reason, the National Treasury had to borrow a large amount of gold dragon coins from the Free Trade Bank. This emerging big bank currently has the most ability to lend to the king and also requires the smallest interest. Party. As a result, knights from all over the country came to King's Landing one after another, and the entire city fell into unprecedented crowding and chaos. Yeting arrived at Junlin City at such an opportunity. If you think about it carefully, the conspiracies and relationships in A Song of Ice and Fire are indeed very complicated, and it is still a bit reluctant to write them in a short length. The picture shows King's Landing in Minecraft, the work of the boss. Chapter 182. On the 3rd day after Prime Minister Ed took office, the grand tourney that King Robert talked about was finally about to begin under the spotlight. The emblems and banners of the Baratheon family and the families of the 7 kingdoms were rustling in the wind. The Stormland and the royal family, the crowned stag of the Baratheon family, the Ice Wolf of the Stark family in the north, the west, the roaring golden lion of House Lannister, the Riverlands, the Trout of House Tully, the Vale, the Moonlit Falcon of House Arryn, the Reach, the Golden Rose of House Tyrell, the Iron Islands, Greyjoy. The Yi family's four-clawed sea monster, Dorne, and the Martell family's thorny sun gun are blooming, and they are inlaid on the edges of tents and various war tools, and even small and medium-sized feudal lords such as Rose Fox, Green Apple, and Rainbow Trout. Flags also appeared around the main house. The shields of the knights were hung at the entrance of the camp, and a long row of silk pennants fluttered in the wind. The fine 337 steel sword and gold-plated spurs shine with dazzling sunlight. Strong knights are everywhere training with the help of trainee knights. The attendants were busy oiling and waxing the armor, grinding and maintaining the spears and weapons, while the grooms led the magnificent horses to the river to wipe, clean and adjust the saddles. The night before the tournament is about to begin. The knight's horns sounded and the horses' hooves rumbled. The last batch of knights arrived at Starry Night and were busy setting up camp. After nightfall, there was a big banquet by the river and endless singing. All dignitaries from the entire King's Landing city attended the event and had a drink and reminisced with the lords who came from all over the Seven Kingdoms to lead the knights. The knights held a grand banquet by the river. The beautiful PRST youths in full bloom were busy courting the knights and striving for a fragrant and lucrative business. The noble ladies also found excuses to ride in treasure cars and slowly passed by the night camp. The pretty girls behind the incense fans stared at the young talents under the Lord's banner with interest, smiling and guessing. They were arguing about who was the strongest knight in the Seven Kingdoms. There is no doubt that this will be the grandest knightly competition in the 15 years since King Robert ascended the throne. The bounty of up to 90,000 gold dragon coins attracted the strongest warriors from all over the continent and even the world to King's Landing. If King's Landing hadn't been a major transportation thoroughfare and a huge waterway port, it would have been really difficult to gather the powerful people from all over the continent here in 3 days. The next day, thousands of civilians came to watch outside the city wall and along the river bank. The spectacle of the tournament is breathtaking, the shining armor, the tall war horses covered in gold and silver, the loud shouts of the crowd, and the bright flags fluttering in the wind. The first day was a horse and spear competition that lasted until dusk. The rumble of war horses' hooves trampled the land of the competition ground into a dilapidated wasteland. Jaime the Kingslayer, a Lannister of the King's Guard, has a brilliant record. In a horse show, he easily defeated Sir Andar Royce and Lord Blaise Cullen of the Marches, and then faced off against his older colleagues. Barristan Selmy started a fierce battle. In the first 2 rounds, Sir Barristan defeated his opponent who was 30 or 40 years younger than him. Sandor Clegane and his giant brother, Sir Gregor the Mountain, were equally unstoppable, savagely defeating one opponent after another. The most terrifying thing that day happened when Sir Gregor appeared for the second time. His spear was cocked and struck under the gorget of a young knight from the Vale of Arryn. Because of the excessive force, the spear went straight through the opponent's throat. Killed instantly. Next, Sir Balon Swan was also defeated by Gregor, and Lord Renly Baratheon was defeated by the Hound. He was hit so hard that he almost flew backwards from his horse. There was a violent clang when his head hit the ground, and the entire audience gasped. Fortunately, the only thing that suffered was the golden antlers on his helmet, one of which was broken by him. When Lord Renly got up, the crowd cheered him wildly, for King Robert's youngest brother was always popular with the crowd. He bowed gracefully and handed the broken antlers to the victor. The Hound snorted and threw the broken horn into the audience. The people immediately fought to death for the little gold. It was not until Lord Renly finally walked into the crowd to calm the people that order was restored. In the end, there were only 4 people left on the field, the Hound and his monster brother Gregor, the Kingslayer Jaime Lannister, and a masked knight wearing silver and blue armor. No one knew this masked knight, but in this whole day's battle, he showed agility and strength that was completely inconsistent with his body, so that no one dared to underestimate him. That morning he scored 3 goals and 3 goals. Out, they defeated 3 Kingsguard. Such a powerful method immediately attracted everyone's attention, and from the sound he made, it could be heard that this knight was a quite young man, and some even thought that he might not be underage yet. This is a bit exaggerated. The noble girls present began to have thoughts about this masked knight. Just because of his voice, he captured the hearts of many girls. They began to fantasize about the pale silver lion-like dragon. What a handsome face underneath the helmet. Among them, Sansa Stark, the daughter of Ed Stark, is the most important. Sansa is a traditional beauty. She inherited the Tully family's exquisite cheekbones, clear blue eyes and thick auburn hair from her mother. Her figure is slender and graceful, and very feminine. When he saw the masked knight once again using quick and precise thrusts to knock his opponent off his horse without injuring him at all, she excitedly said to her friend Jenny, the daughter of the steward of Winterfell, "He is really graceful, isn't he? He defeated every one of his opponents so easily, but none of them were injured. He is so powerful and compassionate, and is a true knight." She thought of the bloody scenes that had occurred in the arena before. In addition to the Demon Mountain killing an opponent, there were also several knights splattered with blood on the arena, and even more horses died. She has always believed that competitions between knights should be noble and graceful competitions, and those who turn such competitions into slaughterhouses can only be barbarians. She held her face with her hands 4.9, tilting her head and thinking, "Jenny, what do you think his face will be like under the helmet? He should be quite young and handsome, with some melancholy in his eyes. He should have a very heavy past, which is why he always wears a mask and refuses to reveal his true face. He might also be ugly, or have a long scar on his face," Jenny teased her, "otherwise why does he keep covering his face?" "Don't talk nonsense, Jenny," Sansa said angrily, "the masked knight can't be ugly, his voice is so beautiful, even Prince Joffrey is not as good as him. Oh, he must be even more handsome than Joffrey." Pictured is Sansa. Chapter 183. At this point in the game, there are not many opponents who dare to face the masked knight. In this scene, there were only 3 knights standing opposite the masked knight, one of whom was Sir Loras Tyrell, a young man known as the Knight of Flowers. Sir Loras is the youngest son of the Duke of Highgarden and the Warden of the South, Mace Tyrell. He is 16 years old. If the masked knight is not included, he should be the youngest knight on the field. His armor is carefully carved. The enamel above contains 1,000 bouquets of different flowers, and his snow-white mount is covered with red blankets and white roses. Every time he won, Sir Loras would take off his helmet, take a white rose from the red carpet, and throw it to a beautiful girl in the crowd. In this competition, the Knight of Flowers was also a very popular player, not only because of his skills, but also his appearance. Unfortunately, before he could reach the end, he encountered the masked knight. No one thought that he would be the opponent of the masked rider. In fact, the masked rider's effortless marksmanship had no equal in the entire arena. Facing such a formidable enemy, the Flower Knight and the other 2 people looked at each other, reached a tacit understanding, and at the same time aimed their lances at the masked knight. How could he do this? "Sir Loras disappoints me so much," Sansa said angrily to Jenny beside her, unaware that she was also a fan of the Knight of Flowers before. "To treat the masked knight like this, it's so unfair." Unknowingly, she had completely sided with the masked knight, and his victory and safety tightly grasped her heart. However, the masked knight didn't care. He just raised his lance gracefully and saluted the audience, which immediately caused the audience to cheer like a tsunami, and many ladies and girls screamed. He tightened his grip on the divine silver horse. The horse started slowly in tacit agreement, but soon started to run completely. It took almost only a few breaths to increase the speed to the extreme, aiming at the Knight of Flowers on the other side and sprinting away. The other 2 knights also knew the meaning of lips dying and teeth cold, and they all mounted their horses to attack from both sides. However, the masked knight didn't seem to care about such a flanking attack. The moment he crossed paths with the Knight of Flowers, he held the lance in one hand with his right hand and pointed at the opponent's lance with precision. He picked up the spear tip of the Flower Knight and let it hit the second knight's spear tip. With this buffer, he easily twisted his body on the horse and dodged the second knight's attack. And his free left hand was not idle. The third knight stabbed the spear as fast as lightning, and he easily grabbed the head of the spear with one hand, as if he was reaching out to pluck a rose, and this man the knight tried his best with both hands, but couldn't get the spear back from the masked knight. The audience immediately burst into excitement, and the masked knight's terrifying power and keen skills once again shocked them. Next, before the Knight of Flowers and the second knight could attack again, the masked knight's hand suddenly exerted force and pulled the third knight off his horse, even taking off his lance. Then, the masked knight held the tip of the gun with his left hand and smashed the handle of the stolen lance in the direction of the Flowers Knight. The Flowers Knight was quite agile and managed to dodge narrowly, but on the second the 2 knights had no chance to dodge and could only hang up their guns to parry. However, who would have thought that the masked knight actually fired his bow from left to right, and the lance in his right hand took the opportunity to stab the second knight quickly. The tip of the gun flashed a silver light in the air, past the knight's defense, and hit the target. There was a gap in his shoulder armor, and as the masked knight exerted upward force, the second knight was also lifted off his horse. Now, the only person in front of him is the Knight of Flowers. Sir Loras swallowed. He realized that it was completely impossible for him to win this contest, but his strong self-esteem kept him from surrendering. The second charge between the two began. This time, the Knight of Flowers did not have two helpers to help him. He was no longer able to persist in front of the masked knight. The masked knight easily dodged his attack, and then stabbed his shield with a lance. It was shattered, and he himself fell off the horse under the powerful impact. This scene happened to happen in front of Sansa's table. The coquettish Knight of Flowers was now disgraced, and the white roses he had prepared fell from his arms to the ground. However, what puzzled people was that this time the masked knight did not leave the scene. He picked up the white roses on the ground with one move. In full public view, when his silver horse stopped in front of Sansa, she felt that her heart was about to explode. "Dear lady," he said, "no matter how great a victory is, it is not half as beautiful as you. I didn't prepare a gift, so I had to give it a temporary gift." "It's rude to do this, don't be offended." Sansa shyly took the flower, her whole body shocked by his heroic appearance. Through the gaps in the armor, she saw his black eyes, which were as deep as obsidian, but also gleaming like mercury. She deeply inhaled the sweet fragrance of the rose and held on to it until the masked knight rode away. In another corner of the auditorium, Arya, dressed as a swordsman and carrying a thin sword called Needle on her waist, looked in the direction of Sansa, somewhat indignantly. Why would someone like the masked rider give flowers to such a delicate girl like her? She complained to the bald man next to her. This masked rider turns out to be a vain guy. The bald man is his swordsmanship teacher, Syrio Farrell. He is a swordsman master and the former chief swordsman of Bravus. However, at the moment, he has been staring at the back of the masked knight, his eyes with admiration. "I have always told you that if you want to become a powerful swordsman, you must have keen perception, elegant actions, and control your own fear. What we are learning is not the dance of steel in Westeros, the dance of knights dance, slashing around, but the dance of the killer, the dance of water, moving quickly and unexpectedly." He said seriously, "This masked knight not only has powerful power, but also moves very quickly. Every time he has completely mastered the essence of the rapier. He is a very powerful opponent. In the previous battle, the knight's dance and the killer's dance, water and steel were all perfectly combined by him. Together, it's really unprecedented. I really want to challenge him." Such a high evaluation shocked Arya, because even for powerful men like Jaime Lannister and Sir Gregor the Mountain, his master had never given such a high evaluation. "If he and you compare, who is stronger?" Arya asked stupidly. "Although I don't want to admit it," Syrio Farrell shook his head in shame and said with a bitter smile, "I am no match for him." This is the fourth serious update. In fact, the number of words is almost the same as the previous 2 days. The picture shows an old sword, the masked knight's armor style is like this, plus a gun-like helmet. Chapter 184. The day's competition ended with only 4 contestants left: Kingslayer Jaime Lannister, Hound Sandor Clegane, Mountain Gregor Clegane and the Masked Knight. By this time the moon had already risen and people were tired, so the king announced that the last 3 competitions would be held until tomorrow morning before the group competition. The crowd gradually dispersed, while discussing the grand jesting event of the day and the highlight of the next day, while the courtiers and dignitaries went to the river to dine. As the future princess, Sansa was definitely placed next to the king and queen, sitting with Prince Joffrey. Because her direwolf died because of Joffrey, although Sansa longed for a fairy tale marriage with a prince and had a crush on the handsome Joffrey, she still criticized him at the moment, and Joffrey the words that followed made her sense against him even worse. "How dare that masked joker insult a prince's fiancé like this," he screamed in an unprecedentedly vicious tone. "Tomorrow, my dog will take care of him, or my uncle Jaime will too. After that, in a few years, when I can enter the market, I will take care of him with my own hands." This made Sansa very angry. In front of Sansa, who had completely become a fan of the Masked Rider, she said that the Masked Rider was a joker. Joffrey was originally tall, handsome and graceful in Sansa's mind. The image of Pandion, heroic and brave and righteous, has completely disappeared. At this time, she suddenly realized that Joffrey was not the Prince Charming she imagined. In fact, he was cruel, willful and narrow-minded. This was something Sansa had learned from losing the dire wolf before. This can be seen from the incident. It was Joffrey who took the initiative to challenge Arya and her playmates, but it was Joffrey who used excessive means in the competition, causing him to be bitten by a wolf, but he actually being able to tell lies with open eyes in front of the king and frame area for attacking her master. Originally, she had been comforting herself, blaming Arya entirely for the death of the dire wolf, but now it seems. As soon as Sansa's dissatisfaction with Joffrey began, she immediately got out of control. She quickly remembered Joffrey's many cruel behaviors in daily life. He was mean to his servants, often violent towards those around him, and liked to watch people suffered and were unlucky, etc. In the past, she would selectively ignore these details, or find excuses for her fiancé, but now, she suddenly felt that she saw this person clearly. Most of Sansa's innocent romantic fantasies about handsome princes, noble knights, and love were shattered in this way. She also called out her sister Arya. Although she often did not deal with her, she was relatives who have always been kind to me, including my father, older brothers and younger brothers, they are the ones who truly love me and are kind to me. Then, she remembered what her father once said, we have come to a dark and dangerous place. This is not Winterfell. There are too many enemies who want to kill us, and we cannot kill each other. When heavy snow falls and cold wind blows, wolves that walk alone die and wolves that gather in packs live. You and Arya may be worlds apart, but after all, the same blood flows in your body. Is King's Landing really a dark and dangerous place? Originally, she didn't believe her father's words, because she always thought that Joffrey was Prince Charming in fairy tales, and his mother, Queen Cersei, was also an elegant and beautiful lady, but now she doesn't convinced. For the first time, she no longer yearned for the life in King's Landing, nor did she yearn to be a queen as much as before. She began to miss Winterfell, the warm home in a city that was always in harsh winters. Yeting never expected that his impulsive behavior when playing the role of Masked Rider would actually make the innocent and naive character in the original work even to the point of being ridiculous, and deceive his own father. He was called the second son by readers. Silly Sansa Stark saw some of the real world in advance. In the original book, it is precisely because Sansa herself did not understand the situation in King's Landing, nor the darkness of human nature, and because she trusted Prince Joffrey and Queen Cersei too much that her father's plan was leaked, leading to his tragic death in King's Landing, and ultimately the Stark family fell apart. However, maybe this time, half of the Stark family died tragically, others disappeared, and the ending of almost annihilation may change. But even if he knew everything, he wouldn't care about this, because the future chaos of the Seven Kingdoms cannot be prevented by the Stark family conserving their power. On the contrary, if Stark's power is preserved, then half of the wishful thinking of the mastermind behind this chaos will be miscalculated. Chaos will still occur, but the strength of the various forces in the mastermind's plan will no longer be as he imagined. Although Sansa has some dissatisfaction with Prince Joffrey, she is now the prince's fiancée and a traditional lady. She has no choice but to have a tit-for-tat quarrel with Joffrey and can only express her love for the prince through silence. Dissatisfied. However, such silence angered the cruel and impatient Prince Joffrey even more. When he found out that the girl was ignoring him, he immediately became angry and said, "Look, you little BCH, look what I will do tomorrow. To torture your masked rider, I will let the mountain break his limbs, you know he can do it, then this masked rider will lose all his reputation, who would like a limb? What about the disabled cripple? He will become a penniless beggar, and then I will buy him into the palace and make him a eunuch like Varys and I will torture him in front of you. This is the fate of the prince who offended, Zhao." No, Sansa blurted out in shock. Today she had seen how the magic mountain killed the young knight of Aran Valley. When she thought about the real cry in her heart, she would suffer someone worse than him. She shuddered inwardly at the fate she faced. "No. By the seven gods, you can't do this," she grabbed Joffrey's sleeves and begged, "you are a high-ranking prince, and he is just an ordinary knight. Why do you treat a man so cruelly? What about you who have never seen anyone face to face? Show mercy." However, her attitude made Joffrey even more angry. He threw away Sansa's hand, pursed his lips and said cruelly, "Shut up, you BCH. How dare you contradict your future husband? Just wait. Well, I will give you a gift tomorrow, the gift you want most." With that said, Joffrey walked away. Chapter 185. Sansa has already guessed what Joffrey meant, but she has no way to do it because she has neither the power to resist him nor the men who can stop it. His friend Jenny and the nun who takes care of her are both. She is just a weak woman. She can't even tell the masked knight the news, because as the prince's fiancée, she is surrounded by the king's men. She found that in reality she was so weak and helpless. My masked knight, you are so brave and graceful, but why do you suffer such a fate? 7 gods above, who can tell me what should I do? Suddenly, she thought of an acquaintance she saw in another corner of the auditorium today, her sister, Arya. After she saw Arya at that time, she and Jenny laughed at her duplicity, because Arya once said that fighting between knights was boring, and she would rather practice swordsmanship by herself than come to watch the show. However, now she thought that if it was Arya who had always been naughty and liked to run around, she would definitely be able to find the masked rider to remind him before tomorrow's game. However, now she and Arya are still in the Cold War stage, and they are dissatisfied with each other. She thinks that Arya killed her dire wolf, but the latter feels that her sister was in love with her and Joe. Prince Free chose not to help each other and did not tell the truth to testify for himself. He was a traitor. Although the two girls later forgave each other a little under the mediation of their father Ed Stark, neither of them took the first step due to face and long-term dislike of each other. So now, does she really want to put down her dignity and apologize to her sister? In this case, Arya will definitely laugh at her. No. So what if Arya laughs at him? In order for the masked rider to save his life and dignity, what's the point of just showing off a little face? If she couldn't bear even this insult, then how could she talk about saving the masked rider, and how could she be worthy of the white rose that the masked rider gave her today? At this moment, Sansa suddenly felt that she had become noble. She was like the brave noble lady in the fairy tale, regardless of hardships and dangers, to save her knight. So, she immediately stood up, lifted her skirt, and walked in the direction of her father. She knew that once the banquet was over and she was taken back to the Red Keep, she would have no chance. Soon, he found Arya in a corner of the banquet. She was like a wild child, grabbing the leg of lamb with her hands and putting it in her mouth to gnaw. She still had the stitch on her waist. Clothes needle. Normally, Sansa would always accuse her of being unbecoming and unladylike when eating like this, but now she couldn't care so much anymore. Listen, my sister. She hurriedly grabbed Arya's oily hand and begged, I need you to do me a favor. I want you to help me deliver the message to someone I don't have. Anyone I can reach, can you do me this favor? The future queen also needs help from me, the troublemaker Arya. Arya squinted at Sansa and asked in a somewhat sarcastic tone, aren't you supposed to be with your white horse now? Is the prince together? If you need help, just go to him. Anyway, you, the future queen, are on the same side as him. I, a wild child, am only worthy of being your servant. He is not Prince Charming. Sansa blushed a little. She knew that her sister hated Prince Joffrey the most, and the conflict between their sisters was also because of him. Moreover, after listening to her sister's words, she had never hated Prince Joffrey as much as she does now. Free, all the good things about him in her mind have become so ugly. It's you who caused such a big conflict between us sisters. She thought angrily and aggrievedly. She ignored Arya's greasy hands and held her hand tightly with both hands, don't mention Joffrey again. He is not some Prince Charming. He is stingy, mean, and so cruel. I should have told him all the good things he did. I'm sorry, sister, I was fascinated by him at the time and didn't see his true face, Aid. When she said the last words, her tears had already flowed out, because she suddenly thought that she would marry such a person in the future, which made her lament her fate. Really, really? Do you really think so? Arya looked at Sansa in disbelief. She never thought that her sister would actually apologize to her for such a thing. After all, my sister lost her dire wolf because of this incident. She looked at Sansa with expectant eyes. Sister, have you really discovered that Joffrey is a bad person? Yes, yes, seeing her sister's distrustful eyes, Sansa immediately shed tears and said hurriedly, I have seen clearly what kind of person Joffrey is. My sister was blind before, but it won't happen again. You're still blaming your sister, right? No. Arya denied hurriedly. She wanted to wipe Sansa's tears with her hands, but found that her hands were all greasy from the mutton, so she hurriedly rubbed her hands on her clothes, and then he wiped the corners of his eyes for his sister. I have forgiven my sister. She said seriously and anxiously, as if she was afraid of Sansa. She hastily added, Father said, we must protect each other, warm each other, and share strength. We must hate those who will the ones who really hurt us. I hate the Hound, Prince Joffrey, and the Queen. I won't hate you. Thank you, sister. Sansa had stopped crying. Arya's words made her feel extra warm. She also said, the death of Lady, that's the name of her dire wolf, was due to Joffrey. I have the responsibility of a queen, and I won't blame you anymore. The two sisters forgave each other, smiled at each other, and their relationship returned to its former self. No, it was much closer than before. Suddenly, Arya seemed to have thought of something and said hurriedly, Sister Sansa, since you found out that Joffrey is such a bad person, why did you marry him? Wouldn't this mean that you will have to live for the rest of your life? In pain? Let's go to our father and ask him to stop this. No, let's not be busy with this first, Sansa refused. She knew that her father was very busy now. Not only did the royal council make him unhappy, but the recent investigation into the cause of death of his adoptive father Jon Arryn also made him unable to do anything. He was already well. After not sleeping well for a few days, Sansa felt that she shouldn't disturb him now. The picture shows Arya. To be honest, it's a pity for the sisters Ersha and Sanyai. They obviously complement each other very well. The two sisters have completely different styles and they are both beautiful. Their mother and aunt were both great beauties. Needless to say, the latter directly led to the jealousy between Robert and Rhaegar, which led to Robert's rebellion and ended the Targaryen dynasty for hundreds of years. The former even triggered the Ice and Fire War. In the entire plot of Song of Songs, the culprit of the chaos in the Seven Kingdoms has been obsessed with the person for his whole life, which can be said to have indirectly led to the second subversion of the regime of the Seven Kingdoms. Both of these two people can be regarded as bringing disaster to the country. As for Ersha and Sanya, the former looks like his mother and the latter looks like his aunt. It's really... The genes of the Lang family are really amazing. Chapter 186. Now there is a more urgent matter to ask you. She looked at Arya seriously, this matter is about the masked knight at the tournament. You are also here today. You should know about the masked knight at. Arya's little face couldn't help but blush when her sister mentioned what she had done at the competition today. 2 days ago, she said in front of Sansa, I'm not interested in participating in any boring competition. But now she was discovered by the other party in person, which made her feel a little embarrassed. However, when she wanted to deny it shyly, the masked rider thing immediately cheered her up. To be honest, she was also quite interested in this masked rider. In the audience today, her evaluation of the masked rider and her self-reflection made her very concerned about this young master. Sansa described what happened before and said, you also saw the masked rider today, right? I hope you can find the masked rider tomorrow and tell him about it. Leave King's Landing quickly, or the cruel prince will harm him. The Magic Mountain is no match for the masked knight. Arya blurted out. She trusted her master's judgment the most, because in her opinion, her master himself was a master. In the previous practice, no matter how she drew her sword could not touch her master. She felt that the bulky Magic Mountain would definitely not be able to defeat her master. When Magic Mountain faced her master, it would definitely be the same as her, unable to touch him. How could such a person defeat the masked rider in the slightest? Regarding martial arts, Sansa still trusts Arya's vision, because she has been interested in this since she was a child, but she also knows that even in a martial arts contest, the mountain can't defeat the masked knight, but Joffrey he is not a person who fights fairly. He can do many dirty tricks outside the game. She told Arya her judgment. Why is he like this? She said loudly and unconvinced, thinking of how Joffrey treated her and her playmates. Joffrey was not their opponent in the battle, so he used a real sword to chop him. He is not a rule-abiding person. Okay, she said helplessly, you are right, I will find a way to remind him before the game. Suddenly, she remembered the scene in the game where the masked knight presented flowers to Sansa, so she blurted out. You like that masked rider very much, right? You haven't even seen what his face looks like. What are you talking about, Arya? Sansa blushed a little and squirmed, but in front of her sister, she still said calmly, although I didn't see his face, I believe he must be very. He is handsome, young, has a nice voice, and is very chivalrous. Arya knew as soon as she heard that her sister had fallen in love again. To be honest, she felt that her sister was good at all. She was a fully qualified and even excellent lady that she envied. But when it came to love, she always fantasizes about being a character in night novels or fairy tales, and is deeply involved in it. She likes Joffrey because of this reason, she has fantasies about the role of a prince. However, Arya agreed with her sister's choice this time. She also felt that this masked knight was a good guy, but not because of his demeanor, but because he was so young but so skilled in martial arts. But thinking of this, Arya felt a little jealous and sad, because she had always felt that Sansa had everything. Sansa is good at sewing and embroidery, can sing and dance, can recite poetry and lyrics, and knows how to dress up. What's worse, she is also a beauty. Sansa inherited the Tully family's slender cheekbones and thick auburn hair from her mother, while Arya looked exactly like her father, with dark brown hair and dull face, a slender, gloomy face, and Jane always liked to scream she had horse-faced Arya. Later, when her face grew, she began to look as beautiful as her aunt. Later, after the king and prince arrived, Sansa became the princess again. Although she hated Joffrey and the queen, she still envied Sansa for being chosen. After all, this is a proof of charm. Now the masked knight with superb martial arts is also very courteous to her. As for myself, I am just a wild child-like girl who is not proficient in the art of being a lady. The nuns have always disliked her. The only places where she is better than her sister are horse riding and swordsmanship, but the masked knight will like her. A girl who is good at swordsmanship? Does he like real ladies like others? Originally, Arya only had a good impression and admiration for the masked rider as a martial arts master, but due to jealousy of her sister, she suddenly became curious about the opposite *X side of the masked rider, and even had the idea of competing with her sister. 0. Please give me flowers. Men who are chased by girls are more attractive. This is the principle. Even so, Arya is essentially a good child after all, and she still wants her sister to have a good home. She suppressed her sourness and suggested to Sansa, "Why don't you and masked knights, let's elope together. I heard from the master that the masked knight is from Essos, not from the Seven Kingdoms. Since he appreciates you and you like him, you might as well escape to the continent of Essos together, so that you don't have to marry the nasty Joffrey, and in Essos you won't be able to catch the ugly ones." This proposal is a bit bold, and it completely touches Sansa's girlish heart. Isn't this a plot that often appears in fairy tales? However, as a lady, Sansa couldn't do it to boldly agree to this plan in front of her sister. She shyly said, "You can do it," and immediately ran away. 0. This was her boldest response. In the individual competition early the next morning, there were only 4 players participating. The masked knight dressed by Yeting was preparing early on the sidelines. While the guests were waiting for the king to take his seat, he was feeding his horse on the sidelines. He chose this horse from Drogo's Kayla, and it is the same female as Daenerys's silver horse. Although he is not good at training horses, under the power of the dragon, which horse dares to explode? Woolen cloth? Suddenly, he found strangely that a child wearing boy-like leather clothes, with short hair, and holding a rapier was walking towards him. Although she looked like a tomboy, she had a slight bulge on her chest, and Yeting could see it. "Come on, she's a girl." The girl obviously realized that she was noticed. She smiled slightly at Yeting, who was covering his face with a helmet, and then stabbed him fiercely with the thin sword in her hand. The girl is not very strong, but her movements are very agile and her angles are very tricky. In addition, she is left-handed and most people are not used to the way she draws the sword. Therefore, facing such a sudden attack, even a well-trained, even if the veteran tried to escape, he would inevitably feel embarrassed. From seeing the girl's dress, the sword in her hand, and her appearance that was somewhat similar to Sansa, Yeting immediately recognized her identity. The second daughter and third daughter of the Stark family. Son, Arya Stark. The picture shows Alaya. Chapter 187. Seeing this sword, Yeting couldn't help but his eyes lit up. It was Arya who could become the Faceless One in the future. Although she had just started learning the sword for a few days, she was already able to make it look impressive. You must know that the Faceless Men are to the world of A Song of Ice and Fire what Hassan Sabah is to the Islamic world. They are both top assassins who will not survive as long as they take action. The difference, the ability of the Faceless Men, lies in the identity and appearance of kaleidoscopic shapeshift, and the number of them is also smaller. However, for Yeting, whose dynamic vision was far beyond the limit of Superman, the thrust was too slow. He grabbed the tip of the sword casually. After the tip of the sword was held by the iron glove, Arya could not shake the opponent's hand no matter how hard she tried. "I had no choice but to give up. The teacher is right, you are indeed a real master." Arya looked at Yeting with bright eyes and said curiously, "Since you can catch my sword so easily, are you also good at swordsmanship?" "I know a little bit about swordsmanship," Yeting released his hand and replied casually, but the reason why I can catch your sword is not because of my swordsmanship, but because your speed is too slow for me. Really? Arya blushed a little, but she immediately explained, actually, I have only learned the sword for less than 2 days, so I am very slow to draw the sword, but it will not be like this in the future. No, little sister, I think you are already moving the sword very quickly. Yeting casually touched the girl's messy hair with his other hand without gloves, and comforted her, seeing that in the arena, those knights? In fact, in my opinion, their gun shooting speed is almost the same as yours just now. If you only learned it for 2 days, then you are really a genius. Really, really. Feeling the warm touch on her head and the other person's compliment, Arya blushed unexpectedly. She said stupidly, hey, do you really think I'm a genius? Yes, Yeting nodded seriously, have you heard of the Faceless Men? They are the most powerful assassins in the world. I think with your ability, you can definitely become one of them. He is giving boring spoilers again. After being praised by a master like the Masked Rider for her ability, Arya immediately had a favorable impression of the other person. In addition, the other person did not look down on her because she was plainly dressed, nor did she look down on her because she was a girl but looked like a tomboy. Disgusted with herself, Arya immediately felt that the other person was the best person in the world. After all, she was only 9 years old. By the way, her sister Sansa was only 12 years old. After chatting for a while, Yeting asked her, what is the name of this lovely young lady? Apart from her parents, this was the first time in her life that Arya was called cute by someone. Her face turned a little red and she stuttered as she replied, my name is Arya Stark. Ah, I know you. You are the daughter of Lord Ed, the Guardian of the North, right? I remember seeing your sister in the stands yesterday. Yeting asked as if he didn't care, and there was no hint of any concern for the North in his tone. However, Arya didn't care about the respect of the Realm Guardian. Instead, she gave him a high look because of this, thinking that this was the knight truly worth making friends with. Hearing the other party mention her sister, Arya couldn't help but feel a little jealous in her heart. She asked with some concern, do you think, who is cuter between me and my sister? She used the word cute because she knew that she was inferior to her sister in appearance. However, to her surprise, the other party did not choose Sansa categorically, but replied like this, I think you are both amazing beauties. If your sister has a kind of elegance and gentle beauty, you can be said to be cute yet wild, a little beauty with different characteristics like her. Arya immediately became happy. Although she has always been like a tomboy, as a girl, who wouldn't care about her appearance? Looking at Arya's expression, Yeting added with a half smile, are you satisfied with what I said? Upon hearing this, Arya immediately realized that the other person was just comforting her and joking with her. She immediately punched the other person's unarmored arm with her small fist angrily. Yeting grabbed the girl's hands angrily and funny, looked into her bright eyes, and comforted, actually, you look a bit like your aunt. If you grow up, you will become a beauty like her. Don't worry. After hearing this, Arya was satisfied, but at this time, she realized that her hands were already in the other person's big hands. Looking at the other person's hands, she suddenly felt that this person's hands were really beautiful, and they had, although he has such a strong martial arts, there are no scars or calluses on his hands. No wonder my sister thinks that the opponent has a handsome face under his helmet. No, it's not this, it should be, how dare he do this, holding a girl's hand when they just met? Don't you think it's rude? But she suddenly discovered that she was not angry at all about this, not because she had always been careless, but because she felt that this person was very kind. She felt that he was like her brother, no, he was more than a brother. Just when she was so embarrassed that she was thinking wildly, suddenly, the horn of the arena sounded. The king has entered the arena, and the next day's competition is about to begin. At this time, Arya thought of her mission. She hurriedly suppressed the inexplicable sourness in her heart, told the masked knight in front of her what her sister had said last night, and made the elopement proposal. Hearing Arya's innocent suggestion, Yeting was both amused and a little touched. How could he have imagined that even though he was masked, he would somehow capture Sansa's heart? He is not surprised by Joffrey's hostility, because Joffrey is such a person. He is not only cruel, but also petty. To say that he will retaliate for his anger is to praise him. In fact, many people have no idea how they provoked him, and they were killed by him. However, the guards and knights in King's Landing, all put together, were not enough for him to fight alone, so he didn't care about such a threat. However, a girl's heart still has to respond. Although he is not good at flirting with girls, he is experienced in being flirted with. So he put on his armor and smiled at Arya. Said, "I have received your sister's kindness and your kindness. I am very grateful to your sister for your favor and love for me. But please rest assured that with my ability, even Joffrey and his men can't do anything to me. They don't scare me, I just want to stay and see what methods they have." When he said this, Yeting looked calm, but his words were arrogant, and he looked at the Seven Kingdoms. The prince's domineering attitude deeply affected Arya. Her eyes looking at Yeting were full of admiration, and she became more and more envious of her sister. Then, Yeting changed his tone and continued, "Although I can only temporarily live up to your sister's kindness, before her wedding to Joffrey, I will find a way to save her from the fire and water. By the way, if Miss Leah and your sister have any trouble, you can come to me." As he said, he took out 2 blue gem pendants and put them in Arya's hands. "These have the dragon god on them. If you have any troubles and need my help, just hold the gem and recite Knight of Blue Silver silently, and I will come to you. Help you. In addition, young lady, if you want to learn more swordsmanship and spearmanship skills, you can come to me at the hotel next to the Free Trade Bank on Steel Street, and I will teach you everything I can." Arya didn't expect that after the other person returned the gift to her sister, he also gave her a share. This made her a little flattered and she had a better impression of the other person. After all, this was the first time that someone other than her parents and brothers had expressed interest in the other person. She and Sansa treat each other equally, instead of favoring her sister. No, they don't treat each other equally, but they prefer her more. After all, the other party even told her where she lives. Arya decided to share the other person's residence with her sister, but the agreement to learn martial arts with the masked knight, no, the Knight of Blue Silver, was kept as her little secret. Just when she was thinking about it, Yeting had already put on the last piece of armor. He got on the horse, casually touched Arya's hair, and then galloped to the market in a dashing way. At this time, Arya realized that in the end, she didn't even know the other person's name. 2.4 However, the Knight of Qin is indeed a more handsome title than the Masked Knight. Hiding the 2 pendants in her arms, Arya jumped for joy and ran towards her viewing seat. For the first time, this girl had some ulterior secrets and some youthful worries. Wow, Sansa and Arya, what should I do if I like them more and more the more I write about them? Wow, I obviously didn't like these 2 girls that much when I read the book. Daenerys, am I going to betray you? Since this is a medieval world, girls can get married and become pregnant at the age of 13 or 14, that's how the original novel is written, so it's not too much to say that you have some first feelings of love at the age of 9. But these 2 will not push in the ice and fire role. Anyone who pushes a girl at the age of 9 is a loser. In addition, we will meet Harry Potter in 2 days, and it will not be postponed again, so everyone can rest assured, confirmed. The picture shows Lyanna Stark, the beauty who caused Robert's rebellion and Arya's aunt. Just think of her as Arya grew up. Chapter 188. As Prime Minister Ed Stark accompanied King Robert to the table, the next day's contest officially began. First, the final 4 winners of the individual competition determine the final champion. The contestants include Gregor Clegane, Sandor Clegane, Jaime Lannister, and now, belatedly, the Masked Knight. Before the game, Sansa in the audience had been happy that the Masked Rider had not appeared for a long time, but now the Masked Rider suddenly came to the field, which made her feel agitated. Didn't Arya run into him? Or was there something unexpected? Sansa stared nervously at the still unrestrained Masked Knight in the field, and almost screamed. She bit her lip with her teeth, and then she stopped herself from shouting impulsively. She knew, if Prince Joffrey's scandal is revealed at this time, then Prince Joffrey still doesn't know what will happen to him and the Masked Knight in the scene. He will become the Doctor of the West. It can be seen from the current situation on the field that the 4 knights who persisted to the finals, except for the Masked Knight, the other 3 are all members of the Lannister family, and they must be on Joffrey's side, because his mother, Robert's queen, is the 04 daughter of the Lannister family. Among them, Jaime Lannister, one of the Iron Guards, is the twin brother of Queen Cersei, while Gregor Clegane and Sandor Clegane are both loyal to Duke Tywin Lannister. Although the level of Knight's Duel does not completely represent the compatibility on the battlefield, at least Sansa knows that her family and Stark's retainers are all good at fighting on the battlefield, but they are not good at Knight's Duel. But even so, the fact that the top 4 Lannister families now include 3 of them is enough to show that their power is so strong that the 7 kingdoms can dominate the sky today. Just as anxiety continued to burn through Sansa's heart, she suddenly discovered that the masked knight began to look towards the audience, as if he was looking for someone. "Are you looking for me?" Sansa tentatively raised her hand, and soon the masked knight's face turned in her direction and stopped looking around. Although she couldn't see the masked knight's expression through the helmet, Sansa could still tell. "The other party must be looking at me." Although she couldn't see the other person's eyes, the look from the masked knight still made Sansa shy. She began to worry about gains and losses, worrying that she didn't do it well when she put on makeup in the morning, or that he would be dissatisfied with her outfit combination. No, many people are concerned about this now. Now they should find a way to let him know Prince Joffrey's conspiracy. Just when Sansa was a little anxious and at a loss what to do, she saw the masked knight nodded to her, and then made a gesture with his hand that was about the same height as his horse's back. "This means Arya? Arya is about the same height. In other words, he has met Arya and knows what I want to tell him, but he still came to the arena, so this is reassuring me." At this moment, Sansa felt that she and the masked knight could not have a better understanding. She felt that they were like the noble lady and the knight who were in love with each other in the fairy tale but were forcibly separated. The two of them could understand each other's meaning with a gesture. So she nodded excitedly to the masked knight. The masked knight then turned in another direction. By Sansa's side, her friend Jenny noticed that her friend had been acting strange since early this morning. It turns out that when she saw the grand occasion in front of her, she would definitely comment on the knights with herself, or talk about her prince. However, this morning, she had always looked worried, and she had been even more uneasy since just now. In addition, whenever she mentioned Prince Joffrey, she was uncharacteristically silent, but when it came to Arya, but instead of saying anything sarcastic, she began to understand and care for her sister. What is all this? After just one night, why does she seem to be a different person? Especially just now, she actually exchanged secret signals with the masked knight. There is definitely something wrong with this. However, just when Jenny wanted to get to the bottom of it, the competition officially started. The exciting competition temporarily diverted her attention. She decided to ask her best friend again later. Sandor Clegane was the first to appear on the scene, wearing smoky grey armor and an olive-green cloak. That cloak and his hound's helmet were his only ornaments. 100 gold dragon coins bet the regicide to win. When Jaime Lannister entered the arena on his elegant blood-brown warhorse, the king's finance minister, Peter Baelish, nicknamed Littlefinger, loudly announced. The horse was clad in gold-plated ring mail, and Jaime himself was gleaming with gold from head to toe, and his lance was whittled from gold wood produced in the Summer Isles. "Follow me," Lord Renly called back. "I see the hound is particularly hungry this morning." Even if a dog is hungry, he knows not to bite his master's hand. Littlefinger replied coldly. This makes sense. Jaime Lannister is the Warden of the West, the son of Duke Tywin, and Sandor is his subordinate. Sandor Clegane put the mask on with a clang and got into position. Sir James blew a kiss to a lady in the crowd, then gently pulled down his mask and rode to the edge of the field. The two lowered their spears. The two horses started running at full speed, and the makeshift stands shook. The hound was on horseback, leaning forward, his spear as steady as a rock, but Jaime moved his body a moment before the exchange, and Clegane's spear point was unhurt by his lion's gold shield. He was stabbed squarely. The wood chips were scattered, and the hound swayed on the horse and almost fell. There was a loud cheer from the crowd. "I should think about how to spend your money," Littlefinger said to Lord Renly. The hound finally managed to steady himself without falling. He suddenly reined in his horse and turned around, riding back to the sidelines to prepare for the second round. Jaime Lannister dropped the broken spear, grabbed a new one, and joked with his squire. The hound clamped the horse's belly hard, and the horse galloped forward, and Lannister also rode to meet him. This time when Jaime moved, Sandor Clegane followed suit. The two spears exploded at the same time, but when the wood chips fell to the ground, the reddish-brown horse ran away to graze alone without its owner. Sir Jaime Lannister rolled in the mud, his gold shining but his helmet dented. Jaime Lannister climbed to his feet, but his richly decorated lion helm was knocked off its side and dented when he fell, making it impossible to get it off. The audience pointed and booed, and the nobles and ladies couldn't help but laugh. Among the noise, what Sansa heard most clearly was King Robert's laughter, which was louder than anyone else. In the end, Sansa's father, Prime Minister Ed, had to send someone to lead the blind and stumbling Lannister lion to the blacksmith. Pictured is Sansa. Chapter 189. At this time, Gregor Clegane was already on the sidelines. He was the tallest and strongest man Sansa Stark had ever seen. King Robert and his two brothers were both quite big, and the Hound was also a big man. There was also a simple-minded stable boy in Winterfell, Hodder, who was much taller than them, but the man in front of him was called. Compared with the Knights of Magic Mountain, they are all much shorter. He was nearly 8 feet tall, with broad shoulders and arms as thick as small tree trunks. His mount looked like a toy horse under his armored feet, and his spear looked like a broomstick. Sir Gregor did not live at court like his brother. He is a solitary person, rarely leaving his territory except in battle or tournament. He was with Lord Tywin when King's Landing fell. He was 17 years old. Although he had just become a knight, he was already famous for his tall size and unparalleled ferocity. Some people say that it was Gregor who smashed Prince Aegon Targaryen, who was still a baby, into a wall and killed him alive. They also said that he later RD the baby's mother, Princess Alaya of Dorne, and finally it took just one sword to kill her. Definitely, no one dared to mention these words in front of him. Sansa looked at him uneasily, because the next battle was between him and the Masked Knight. Although Arya had repeatedly told her that the Magic Mountain was no match for the Masked Knight, now she was very willing to believe in herself. Sister, but looking at Gregor who was several times bigger than the Masked Knight, she was still very uneasy. Sansa herself does not believe rumors easily, but the rumors related to Sir Gregor do not seem to be groundless. He is about to get married for the 3rd time, and there are all kinds of horrific rumors behind the deaths of his first 2 wives. It is said that his castle is a gloomy and terrifying place, with servants missing inexplicably and even dogs afraid to enter the hall. His sister died mysteriously when she was young, his brother was injured in a fire, and his father died in a hunting accident. Gregor inherited the family castle, property, and house and farm. On the day he received the inheritance, his younger brother Sandor left home and joined the Lannister family as a warrior. I heard that he never went back. Not even a passing visit. As the masked rider entered, there was a murmur in the crowd, and Sansa whispered eagerly, "Oh, that's so cool." Compared with Gregor, the masked knight was as thin as a reed. He wore a silver armor with gorgeous pale blue lines, which was polished to a dazzling silver color. The silver-white helmet also has decorative feathers on it. The cloak on the young man's shoulders is dark blue with golden lines on it. His mount was as beautiful as its rider. It was a beautiful silver horse that moved swiftly and swiftly. The masked knight flicked his feet, and his mount jumped left and right like a nimble dancer. Sansa grabbed Ed's arm. "Father, don't let Sir Gregor hurt him," she said. This is the only thing she can do for the masked knight now. Ed saw that she was wearing the white rose that the masked knight had given her yesterday. Jory, the squire, told him everything that had happened yesterday. "They have justing guns," he told his daughter. "They will break into pieces when they hit each other, so no one will be hurt." As he said this, he thought of the body of the young man from Arryn Valley who died at the hands of the Magic Mountain yesterday, making his words seem hollow. After both of them saluted the king, they rode to the edge of the arena, then lowered their spears and took their positions. Sir Gregor pulled the reins and ropes to bring his horse to the starting line, and then suddenly everything began. The horse of the Magic Mountain galloped forward violently, while the silver horse of the masked rider sprinted smoothly and lightly. Sir Gregor twisted the shield, positioned it, adjusted the spear, and aimed it viciously at the height of the opponent's throat. This scene was no different from when he faced the Knights of Arryn Valley yesterday. Ed couldn't help but frown, but at this time, he inconvenient to speak out. Sansa, who didn't understand martial arts, didn't know what it meant, but that didn't stop her from worrying about the masked knight, especially when she saw the Magic Mountain's mountain-like figure crashing into the thin masked knight. Some are worried that he will be knocked out by the Magic Mountain. In another corner of the auditorium, Arya and her master Syrio Farrell were also watching the duel. Unlike Sansa, Arya, who has learned swordsmanship, knows the purpose of the Magic Mountain spear. The little girl has never seen such a real scene. Although she believes in the masked knight, she still can't help but feel sorry for him. "Get nervous." Suddenly, the masked knight was coming towards him, and Motion stabbed him in the throat with the tip of his spear. With his strength, even if the throat was protected by armor, the masked knight had to be stabbed this time. Got his neck broken. However, in the face of this fatal blow, the masked knight did not panic at all. It was as if he was facing a falling leaf. He just tilted his head slightly, and the tip of the magic mountain spear was just a hair away from his. The neck passed by. Such a thrilling dodge, as long as the tip of magic mountain spear was deflected by 5 centimeters, it would have stabbed him in the neck. Including Robert and Ed, many of the older nobles and knights present had experienced the War of Robert's Rebellion and had come out of the flash of swords and shadows on the battlefield. However, seeing such confident extreme dodge, they still couldn't help but want to ask. Why? Why is the masked knight so confident? This dodge method is like dancing on the tip of a knife. However, such extreme dodge naturally has its benefits. Since the dodge is not big at all, the original movements of the masked knight are almost completely unaffected by this dodge. Before Magic Mountain had time to change the movement of his spear, the masked knight had already taken action. The attack of his spear tip was swift and just right, easily bypassing the shield's defense, and the mountain fell down before he could react. Because he was really too big, he also pulled down the horse, and the armor of the man and horse rolled into a ball. Sansa heard cheers, whistles, gasps of horror, excited murmurs, and especially the hoarse, harsh laugh of the hound. Even she herself began to get excited. When she heard other people's praise of the masked knight, she suddenly felt honored. Arya also breathed a sigh of relief for the masked knight, and then she heard Syrio Farrell sigh long and sigh. What you just saw is the highest level of Assassin's Dance, isn't it good money? Whether it's an extreme dodge that's just a hair's breadth away, or a thrust so fast that the opponent doesn't even lift his shield, although it looks simple, but he couldn't handle it at all. This is the real Assassin's Dance. His level is indeed much higher than mine. Speaking of this, Syrio Farrell seemed a little lonely. However, his words immediately attracted Arya's attention. Thinking that the other party had said that he could teach her some skills, Arya felt sweet. It turned out that this skill was so powerful. She was determined to learn this skill from the other party, and then surprise her master, father, and brothers and sisters. The masked knight tightened his reins on the opposite side of the arena without even breaking his lance. When he waved gracefully to greet the audience, his silver armor shone beautifully in the sun, and the entire audience went crazy for him. Pictured is the Magic Mountain. Chapter 190. In the middle of the ring, Sir Gregor Clegane finally loosened his reins and stirrups, and stood up angrily. He suddenly pulled off his helmet and threw it to the ground. His face was gloomy and full of anger. Her hair hangs down over her eyes. "Bring me the sword," he shouted to the attendant, and the boy hurried forward and handed it to him. At this time his mount also stood up. Gregor Clegane slashed his horse with a sword so violently that it almost severed its head. Cheers instantly turned to screams. The horse screamed and knelt down to death, and Gregor walked toward the masked knight on the sidelines with the bloody sword in his hand. "Get him!" Ed yelled, but his words were lost in the roar of everyone else. Stop him quickly." "Please, father," Sansa said, sobbing. Arya's hand was already on the sewing needle. She realized that this was Prince Joffrey's method, so she planned to jump off the auditorium to stop Gregor's behavior, but her master grabbed her shoulder. Grabbed her. "Keep watching," Syrio said. "He will be fine. The Magic Mountain can't hurt him at all." 630 Facing the menacing and sword-wielding Magic Mountain, the masked knight still appeared to have the same grace, as if what he was holding was just a wooden prop for martial arts competitions. He dismounted gracefully and walked towards Gregor face to face, as if he wanted to confront him head-on. "Why doesn't he even have a spear?" Arya screamed when she saw the empty-handed masked knight. As surprised as she was, Sansa yelled for the masked knight to run, but her voice was immediately drowned out by the noise around her. Everything happened so fast, and the two were soon face to face. Gregor swung his giant sword and slashed at the masked knight, but he easily dodged it. The masked knight rushed forward and was immediately close to Gregor. Then he made an uppercut with his left hand towards the chin of the mountain. The demon mountain was more than a head taller than the masked knight, but the punch was fast and fast. The steel glove immediately knocked the demon mountain's head upward, and his chin was immediately covered in blood and flesh. But this blow aroused the ferocity of the demon mountain. He completely ignored the heavy blow he received, roared loudly, eeped, swung his sword with all his strength, and slashed at the masked knight again. Since the two were very close, the masked knight was completely within his attack range. However, the masked knight shortened his body and turned behind his opponent like a civet, making this powerful and heavy blow useless. Sir Gregor turned, but too slowly, too late. This time, the masked knight kicked him hard in the back of the knee. Metal collided with metal, making people's ears ring. Although Gregor was strong enough, this harsh kick still caused his knees to bend and he completely lost his balance. The next punch hit the back of his head, and the steel glove seemed to have broken his head. Blood immediately gurgled out from the back of his head, and soon soaked his hair. Gregor didn't say anything, he just howled like a beast, but the heavy blow to the back of his head still made him almost unconscious. He shook a few times and then fell head first. The giant sword came loose from his hand, and he turned over slowly and heavily. The masked knight stepped forward and stepped on his chest. Magic Mountain groaned and tried to crawl with his elbows, but the masked knight stepped on it so hard that he couldn't stand up at all, and a pool of red blood continued to extend behind his head. The masked knight knocked down the tall Magic Mountain with his bare hands. This scene had already made the scene crazy. People kept cheering loudly. Among them, Sandor Clegane cheered the loudest. Even King Robert cast a surprised expression. And a happy smile. Seeing her sweetheart trample her opponent under her feet and defuse Joffrey's conspiracy, Sansa burst into laughter. Looking at the masked knight's movements, she guessed that the masked knight had not thought of how to deal with this opponent. After a while, the cheers slowly subsided, and the masked knight looked in Robert's direction, seemingly waiting for the king's decision on the Magic Mountain. King Robert also realized this. He nodded with satisfaction, as if he wanted to speak. However, just when he was about to speak, something unexpected happened. Clegane clapped his hands violently and grabbed the back of the masked knight's knees, as if intending to attack him. This astonishing scene immediately made the scene boiling again. However, the reaction speed of the masked knight was faster than Sir Gregor imagined. Before Gregor could use his strength, he used the caught leg as a fulcrum and immediately raised the other leg. Then he stepped hard on Gregor's raised arm. This step was so hard that Gregor screamed in pain like a beast. People discovered that the armor on his arm was twisted abnormally, and his entire arm also had an obvious bend. It was obviously broken by this foot, let alone grabbing the opponent's leg under such circumstances. But the masked knight seemed to be irritated by Gregor's behavior. He felt that just crushing the mountain's arm was not enough to relieve his anger, so he took 2 steps forward, came to the mountain's head, and then aimed at his head and kicked him fiercely. Foot. After this kick, the steel boots were immediately stained with blood. Half of Mo Shan's face had been kicked to pieces, and the bloody appearance could not be seen as a human face. His teeth became fragments, and one the eyeballs seemed to have been kicked to pieces, and even the bones were exposed. Such a tragic scene caused an uproar in the audience, and many noble women could not bear to turn their heads. Sansa originally thought that she would not be able to stand it anymore and would be disgusted by the masked knight's behavior, but she suddenly discovered that she was not actually scared by the mountain's bloody face, nor did she hate the person who caused this bloody scene. The masked rider, on the contrary, she felt a sense of shared hatred and relief. She wanted to applaud the masked rider for his happy revenge. He had already spared the Magic Mountain once, but the Magic Mountain took advantage of his unpreparedness to launch a sneak attack. Sansa felt that she had changed. In the past, she longed for handsome knights, elegant knight duels, and an ending where neither victory nor defeat was humiliating. But now, there is an exception to all this. This masked knight, even if he did not retaliate with kindness, but took a hearty and bloody revenge. She would also be happy for his successful revenge. She seemed to recognize something. Sure enough, is this true love? No matter what the other person does, she is willing to stand by him, even giving up her original bottom line. Without seeing Yeting in person and only saying one sentence, Sansa had completely completed her own strategy. Congratulations! Chapter 191. Finally, it was the king's voice that calmed the chaos, the king's voice and 20 warriors. Robert's adoptive father Jonaran once said that a commander needs a good voice that can be effective on the battlefield. Robert had proven this on the Trident, and now he used this voice again. In the name of your king, he shouted, stop it now. The surroundings immediately became quiet, and the masked knight also stopped moving and looked in the direction of the king, or in other words, after that kick, he made no further movements. Several servants hurried forward and carried the unconscious Magic Mountain away from the scene. That's it, said Robert. That's the end of it. Is the masked knight the champion now? Sansa asked Ed. No, he told her, the masked rider and the hound have to compete again. But Sansa was right. A few minutes later, Sir Sandor Clegane entered the arena, without a horse, armament or a helmet. Just when people were confused, he said roughly to the masked knight, "You did something I wanted to do for a long time. You did a great job. I owe you once. The victory is yours, the masked guy." Thus, the masked knight became the champion of the tournament. King Robert was in good spirits. When he awarded the masked knight the title of champion and the bounty, he suddenly said, "You have been wearing this tight helmet throughout the tourney, and you don't even take it off now. Come down, and you won't even reveal your name. Even I am curious about the face under your helmet. In the name of the king, how about you satisfy my curiosity? My name is Thunderleaf, from the Free Trade City." The masked knight replied, his voice surprisingly young. Then, in full view of everyone, the masked knight took off the helmet of Samaza Yulong. This action immediately attracted everyone's attention. Everyone wanted to know whether the face under the helmet was as handsome as the noble girls imagined, or whether it was as ugly as Sandor Clegane, the Hound. Sansa was also looking forward to it, but she swore to herself that even if the other person was an ugly person, she would not dislike him. When others laughed at him, she would use her gentleness and tolerance to make him move. When the masked rider actually took off his helmet, the entire arena screamed. The reason is not that he is too ugly, but because he is handsome beyond people's imagination. Sansa swore that she had never seen such a handsome man. Even the Knight of Flowers was far inferior to him. His hair was a bunch of lazy and supple black eyes that seemed so deep and charming. Even Robert was stunned for a moment, and then he burst into laughter. "What a handsome young man," he said with a heroic smile, "you remind me of when I was young. At that time, the little girls loved me as much as they loved you. I really don't understand how you carry such a beautiful face. Why are you still covering your face?" When Yeting left the field and returned to the camp, everyone cheered for him. They did witness some amazing scenes today, and they will have something to talk about in the future. That afternoon, it was the masked knight again. After eliminating other opponents with shorter ranges, he defeated Sir Balon Swan and Jurabathral in the final of the 100-step shooting, and won the archery championship. The team competition lasted 3 hours. A total of nearly 40 people participated, most of whom were free riders, hired knights and newly appointed squires who were interested in seeking fame. Armed with blunt weapons, they fought each other in a field filled with mud and blood. One moment they formed a small team to join forces to fight against the enemy, and the next moment they started fighting among themselves. The alliance broke down as soon as it was formed, until only one person was left standing. The winner is still the masked knight, who wields a gorgeous golden-handled sword, calmly faces siege after siege, and finally defeats all his opponents. These opponents include Thuras from Myr, a red-robed monk with a flaming sword, a shaved head, and the appearance of a complete madman. He relied on a flaming sword coated with wildfire to scare his opponents' horses, and he often won team justing tournaments. He had defeated Sandor Clegane 3 times in team competitions. However, he had no advantage at all against the masked knight, who was highly skilled in martial arts and had no fear of wildfire. In the end, the casualty list for the team competition included 2 broken legs, a shattered collarbone, a dozen smashed fingers, 2 horses that had to be disposed of, and more cuts, sprains, and bruises than anyone cared to count. However, a knight named Sandor Leaf became famous in this tournament. All the knights in the 7 kingdoms knew that there was such a young and handsome knight. He had a quirk and liked to wear his helmet tightly. He actually covered his face, but in the martial arts tournament, he not only defeated the terrifying Magic Mountain with his bare hands, but also won the championship in all 3 events of the tournament, which was a record that had never been achieved before. Under Arya's deliberate publicity, the title Knight of Pale Silver spread. The reason was because of his beautiful pair of pale silver armor. Everyone felt that this title was much better than the Masked Knight. In addition, some good people also call him the first Knight of the 7 Kingdoms, because at least in terms of combat effectiveness, no Knight of the 7 Kingdoms can match him. However, although the title First Knight of the 7 Kingdoms has spread, it has not been widely recognized, because now, he has only proved himself on the field. If he can still compete on the battlefield or in other situations of life and death, if we continue to maintain such results during the war, then this title will be worthy of its name. Prime Minister Ed and King Robert were very fond of such a young master. After the game, Ed sent someone to ask if he was interested in finding a position in the Prime Minister's bodyguard, so he readily agreed. In fact, in addition to him, Ed also found people to recruit many top players in the tournament, but there were only a few followers. Most of them were immersed in wine, victory, and the wealth they had just won that they could never have imagined. So he declined the job. This made Ed have a great impression of this young man who was victorious but not arrogant. Since he heard that he was only 15 years old, Ed even had the idea of introducing his other daughter Arya to him. However, because Arya was only 9 years old, and noble girls generally did not get engaged until they were about 12 years old, and they did not get married until they were able to have children at 13 or 14, he gave up his plan. However, Ed still wanted to let these young people get to know each other first, so he arranged for Sandor Leaf to become a captain in the Prime Minister's Guard, responsible for protecting his family or himself. The dragon god cult had already arranged it before coming. There you have it, full background on Sandor Leaf. In fact, Robert once thought about letting this young master become his king's guard, but because the oath of the king's guard included no fiefdom, no wives, and no children, he had to give up. Now this result is definitely in the plan of Sandor Leaf, also known as Yeting, because Ed himself is one of the important targets of the mastermind behind the Seven Kingdoms Rebellion. Now he is very close to the core of this Game of Thrones. Only here can he smoothly add fuel to the chaos of the future. Chaos is about to break out, and Yeting, the poisonous villain of the country, is already in place, and he will start writing Harry Bogant the day after. Tomorrow. Chapter 192. Since agreeing to Robert's request and becoming the Hand of the King, Ed Stark has discovered that the entire city of King's Landing is really full of fog, making him, a wolf from the north, somewhat powerless. As the head of the Stark family of this generation, Ed has inherited the family's tradition of honor, fairness, and selflessness. His persistence in honor and his fair and strict style of doing things have won the respect and love of many northern families. However, King's Landing and Winterfell are two cities, and there are too many intrigues here. Ed is confident that he can be invincible on the battlefield and can fight no matter what kind of enemy he is. However, in the game of power in King's Landing, he seems confused and at a loss. This feeling has been piling up a layer of haze in his mind since he started investigating the death of the previous Hand of the King, himself and Robert's adoptive father, John Ellen 493. The first was the arrival of his wife, Catelyn Tully, and the person who took him to see his wife secretly was the Chancellor of the Exchequer, Littlefinger Peter Baelish, who had been the adopted son of his father-in-law when he was young. I was deeply infatuated with Catelyn Tully, which made Ed dislike him. According to what Catelyn said, her son Bran Stark was actually assassinated after he rushed to Winterfell. The assassin was executed on the spot, leaving only a dagger, and Littlefinger said that the dagger belonged to Tywin Lannister's other son, Cersei, and Jaime Lannister's brother, Tyrion Trask Lannister. This is a huge accusation, because the Lannister family and the Stark family serve as the guardians of the western and northern territories of the Seven Kingdoms respectively, and are among the top lords. Such an assassination could mean another 10 wars engulfing the Seven Kingdoms, just as they did 15 years ago. Because of Littlefinger's help to him and the former brother-sister relationship between Littlefinger and his wife, Ed reluctantly regarded him as an ally, and with his help investigated the cause of Jon Arryn's death. During this process, Littlefinger said something meaningful: "Not trusting me is the wisest thing you have ever done since you jumped off the horse." During the investigation, he discovered that Jon died suddenly of illness, and he had been quite healthy before that, which allowed him to confirm the fact that Jon was murdered. Before his death, Jon had been secretly investigating Robert's illegitimate children and met several of them. He also had a secret meeting with Robert's brother Stannis, and had planned to send his son to Dragonstone. The island was handed over to Stannis for adoption, but they had never had a close relationship in the past, which led to a dead end in the investigation. However, what was worse was that in the subsequent tourney, Gregor the Mountain actually killed a young knight from the Arryn Valley. This knight was an important witness in his investigation, but now he was betrayed by Lan. The men of the Nest family just silenced him. You know, unlike the team competition, the weapons in the night duel competition are specially made for training and are unlikely to cause human life. This cast a haze on his investigation. However, it was not without good news. During the tourney, through the conversation with King Robert, he once again confirmed that his king was still the same bold and charming good friend 15 years ago, which made him have more confidence in my future as the Hand of the King. There was more than one good news. During the martial arts tournament, he was happy to find that his two daughters, who had always been at odds with each other, finally reconciled. In addition, he also gained a general in the martial arts tournament. A general who won all the awards. The 3 champions of the entire tournament are knights from the Free Trade City. The only thing that worries him is that this boy's 2 daughters who are really handsome seem to be a little too obsessed with him. However, on the night after the tournament, the intelligence chief and eunuch Varys met with him secretly and told him a shocking conspiracy: Queen Cersei actually attempted to murder the king. Before the tourney, King Robert once expressed his desire to participate in a team competition with real swords and guns, but Cersei sternly opposed it. Varys claimed that Cersei was trying to use provocation to ensure that Robert could really participate in the team competition, and I want him to die in an accident. This statement sounds ridiculous, but Ed has to admit that for Robert, who prides himself on being brave, this provoking method is indeed effective. Afterwards, Varys told Ed that he was loyal to the interests of the entire kingdom, and told Ed that Cersei was so afraid of him precisely because the king would not hurt him for any reason. At the same time, he exposed the important officials around the king. They have different thoughts, and the fact that the king's guard has a false name. Although the king's 2 younger brothers hate Cersei, they covet the throne even more. Master Pycelle cherishes his position. Littlefinger only loves Littlefinger himself. Among the king's guard, Jaime is the queen. His brother, Sir Barristan only loves his own honor. Sir Boros and Sir Meryn are loyal to the queen, and the others have unclear positions. In other words, the people who are really on Robert's side now are Ed, who is the hand of the king and an old friend for many years. When Ed asked about the cause of Jon Arryn's death, Varys said that a poison called Listears killed him. Varys claimed that it was Arryn's squire, a knight from the Vale of Arryn who was now a dead man, who gave him the drug. However, regarding Cersei's conspiracy, since it was just speculation, Ed had no way to mention it to the king and could only give it up, but he knew that he had to be more careful. At this time, Ed even had the idea of letting his 2 daughters return to Winterfell temporarily. However, when he returned to his prime minister's tower, the scene before him still made him quite pleased. His 3rd daughter Arya, dressed like a boy, was practicing rapier 3.6 under the instruction of his new bodyguard, Sandor Leaf, while his 2nd daughter Sansa was sitting aside, looking at them with a smile. The scene is harmonious in October. The warm scene at home made Ed feel warmer. At this time, even though the relationship between Xander and his 2 daughters was a little too good, he reluctantly accepted it. The guard in front of him, Shay Ossos, and Lannis, he has no connections with the Te family and should be trustworthy. Plus he has such martial arts skills. At the critical moment, the safety of his 2 daughters may depend on him. As for him, he must find out as soon as possible what Jon Arryn was looking for before his death. He had a hunch that this secret was the key to everything. However, what he didn't know was that just in the north, his wife Catelyn Tully discovered Tyrion Lannister on the way back to Winterfell and captured him in one fell swoop. Chapter 193. After becoming Duke Stark's bodyguard, Yeting was surprised to find that Stark's 2 daughters had an unusually high impression of him. Before that, he had met each of the 2 girls separately. But now the eyes of the 2 girls looking at him were full of kindness, admiration, and shyness, which made him a little baffled. However, perhaps because this world has become accustomed to girls' inexplicable self-attacks and free gifts, Yeting did not struggle with this for long, but happily accepted this fact, so he lived a life surrounded by 2 girls. Life. Arya would ask him to teach her swordsmanship every day. During the instruction process, she would inevitably touch and bump into each other, which made Yeting have to tell himself 100 times a day, she is only 9 years old, she is still a child, 3 Nian. No, I must let her go. As for Sansa, she completely gave up the social and party life with other noble ladies and ladies that she had longed for in the past few days, and instead stayed at home to accompany her sister. Then he tempted him 20 times a day. If he hadn't been concerned about the existence of other guards and servants, then 04 he would have taken action decisively. Such an ambiguous life is quite pleasant, especially since Ed Stark is busy with government affairs every day, and he also has to secretly investigate everything that happened to Jon Arryn during his lifetime. He leaves early and comes home late every day. Unfortunately, Yeting had to temporarily interrupt his life for a day and asked Ed for a leave. Then, he immediately left the city and secretly went to Yingdeng City. The reason is that something happened in the 7 countries that could affect the entire political situation. Tyrion Lannister is captured by Ed Stark's wife Catelyn. This is a big deal. Because the 2 families involved are major vassals of the 7 kingdoms, and although Tyrion is not favored by Duke Tywin, he is still his legitimate son, which is likely to lead to a war between the 2 families. Catelyn was undoubtedly wise. She did not take Tyrion back to Winterfell, but took him to the Vale, the area in the Vale of Arryn, because her sister Lisa Tully was there. Sha married the old and childless Jonaran and gave birth to a son for him, so after Jon's death, her son inherited the title of the Vale and Jon, but because the child was still young, Yesha herself became the de facto controller of the valley. You must know that in the Seven Kingdoms, in addition to the royal territories directly controlled by the royal family, there are a total of 8 major families that control 8 major territories. The valley controlled by the Island family is one of them. The others are the northern territories controlled by the Stark family, the Westerlands controlled by the Lannister family, the Stormlands controlled by the Baratheon family, Robert's own family, the Riverlands controlled by the Tully family, the Iron Islands controlled by the Greyjoy family, the Tyrell family, the Southern Territory controlled by the Martell family is finally Dorne. This can be said to be an extremely powerful force. In the Vale of Arryn, Lisa warmly received her sister, and then, at her sister's request, she initiated the trial of Tyrion Lannister in the Eyrie. The crime she sentenced was that Tyrion was suspected of murdering Bran Stark and her husband Jon Arryn. In fact, these two crimes have nothing to do with Tyrion. Tyrion did not attempt to murder Bran. On the contrary, he has a good relationship with Bran's brother Jon Snow, who is considered by the world to be Ed Stark's illegitimate son. This is probably a feeling of sympathy. Tyrion, because his mother died in childbirth due to his own birth, he was very unpopular with his father, and Jon Snow was also unpopular with Catelyn because he was an illegitimate child, actually not, but Ed Stark kept it secret. Tully welcome. In addition, the death of Jon Arryn, another Jon. Westerners like to name their children after the people they respect and love. For example, Harry Potter's children were named Sirius and Albus. In addition, Jon Arryn's son is named Robert, and King Robert is Jon Arryn's adopted son, which is very confusing, and has nothing to do with Lisa. The idea is that Jon Arryn is completely Lisa killed it herself. Definitely, the instigator of all this is Littlefinger Peter Baelish, who grew up with Lisa and made Lisa quite obsessed with her, but deeply loved Catelyn. On the one hand, Baelish killed Jon and took control of the valley through Lisa. On the other hand, he hinted to Catelyn that the person who attempted to murder Bran was Tyrion Lannister of the Lannister family, just to create the conflict between the Lannister family and the Stark family. However, the murderer of Bran was not him, but Prince Joffrey. This cruel prince just randomly found someone to murder Bran on a temporary basis. After Baelish learned about this, he keenly grasped the murder of Bran. Seizing the opportunity to drive a wedge between the Lannister and Stark families, definitely, this is just a temporary plan. He also has another plan to make the Lannister and Stark families fight each other. This plan, let's talk about it later. In short, Peter Baelish wanted nothing more than to cause chaos in the Seven Kingdoms. Only in this way could he, who was born in a small family, rise quickly and become a new great noble. In the original book, his plan almost succeeded. It seems that in some aspects, he does have some of the selfish and poisonous demeanor of Li Aryu and Jiesu. However, there are still some loopholes in his plan. For example, now, although Lisa 400 obeys his advice, Lisa's political wisdom is not high, and the Littlefinger people are in King's Landing, which leads to the grasp of intelligence and the transmission of orders are often not so timely. Once an emergency occurs, or Lisa does something on her own initiative that he has not arranged in advance, the situation may be ruined. Now, this kind of thing really happens. Catelyn captured Tyrion, which made the furious Tywin Lannister send troops from the west, targeting Catelyn's natal family, the Riverlands of the Tully family, but once Tyrion is killed in the Eyrie for the murder of Jon Arryn, Tywin will turn his attention to the Vale, the territory that Littlefinger has actually controlled. Lisa definitely doesn't want to be the target of the Lannister family, but now she feels very frightened because she killed her husband Jon, and is eager to find a scapegoat to get rid of the crime. This has caused a huge blow to the Littlefinger plan. Loopholes. However, in the original book, fate was on the side of Littlefinger, and Tyrion Lannister, the Trask known for his wisdom, used his wisdom and dual trial in the Eagle's Nest to escape. In this way, as soon as this happened, the Lannister had no motive to attack the Vale. Chapter 194. This is definitely something Yeting cannot allow. In the original work, after the death of King Robert, all the princes were divided into 5 factions. The Stark family in the north became the king of the north on their own. However, due to the marriage of Catelyn Tully and Ed Stark, the Riverlands, the Tully family joined the Stark family's faction. On the other hand, the Lannister family, which controlled the west and the king's territory, was also a faction. Robert's eldest brother Stannis formed his own faction on Dragonstone, and Robert his younger brother Renly not only inherited the Stormlands of the Baratheon family, but also married into the Tyrell family, which controlled the southern border, and became a faction. Finally, the Iron Islands declared independence and formed their own faction, and the other two lands, the Vale and Dorland, and declared neutrality. However, such a battle of 5 kings ultimately ended with the victory of the Lannister family. Among them, the weakest Stannis assassinated Renly with the help of the Arhillar sect, and then tried to gain support from the Stormlands in the south, but ultimately lost Renly's Tyrell family and Cersei's son Joffrey at the cost of Prince Lee's marriage. He defected to the Lannister family, and Stannis's army was also completely wiped out under Tyrion's wisdom. Although the Stark family defeated the Lannister family in the early days of the war, they were attacked by the Iron Islands in the end, and were betrayed because of their poor political skills. The allies of the Tully family in the early days of the war had already been crippled by the Lannister family and was of no help to the Stark family. In the end, the Stark family was almost wiped out under the traitor's plan. Yeting wants the 7 kingdoms to have endless war, and he definitely cannot accept the outcome of one family becoming the dominant one. In his plan, there was no need for Stannis to exist at all. Because of him, Renly's power fell apart, and the Tyrell family, which was second in the 7 kingdoms in wealth and even had more troops than the Lannister family, finally turned to Lannis. Special. However, it is no longer possible for him to reproduce the assassination of Renly. This is because the priest of Arhillar who used magic to assassinate Renly for him was Melisandre, and now Melisandre has brought a large number of votes. Arhillar's followers joined the dragon cult, and Arhillar's faith was almost swallowed up by the dragon cult, so Stannis had no choice but to stay on his Dragonstone Island. Definitely, it wouldn't work if Stannis had no power at all, but Yeting had another great gift for him. Secondly, the Tully family definitely should not have been crippled by the Lannister family before Robert died, because in the Riverlands, only the Tully family as lords are the true allies of the Stark family, and the other small families are. However, it was precisely because the Tully family lost its power and the then head of the Stark family, Robb Stark, was not good at politics that led to the betrayal of many allies. If the Lannisters were facing the Vale before the war, it would be different. On the one hand, the Vale could not survive alone and had to start fighting against the Lannister family, which greatly weakened the power of the mastermind behind the scenes, Littlefinger. On the other hand, the Tully family maintained its power, which represented the Stark family will not be betrayed by the grassroots nobles of the Riverlands, nor will they die in the conspiracy, but will maintain the power to confront the Lannister family. In this case, the power of the entire 7 kingdoms was divided into 5 parts. Among them, Renly and the Stark family would attack the Lannister family. Renly was backed by Stannis, who controlled Dragonstone and a fleet. The Stark family has to face the surprise attack from behind by the Iron Islands. Although the Lannister family is powerful, it is attacked everywhere. In this way, the entire 7 kingdoms will maintain war for a period of time, preventing the Lannister family from forming a unified stabilize the situation. The first step that led to this situation was to let Tyrion die in the Eyrie. Since Tyrion escaped through the trial by combat, Yeting's method of coping was very simple. He used the illusion technique to sneak into the Eagle's Nest city, and then used magic to create a small accident during the trial by combat, causing Tyrion to be killed. Angbiwa's warrior died tragically under his opponent's sword. Therefore, in the Eyrie, Tyrion was eventually killed by Lysa Tully on the spot for murdering the former Duke of the Vale, Warden of the East, Jon Arryn, and Warden of the North Ed Stark's son, Bran Stark. Put to death. Then he finished his business and went back to King's Landing to continue spending time with the 2 little girls. As for the Eyrie, Lysa soon regretted it, because the furious Duke Tywin immediately raised his troops and turned to the valley, preparing to attack the Eyrie to avenge his son, and definitely expand his sphere of influence. Unfortunately, it was too late to regret now. She had to bite the bullet and prepare for war with the Lannister family. At the same time, she also sent a letter to King's Landing to ask for Littlefinger's advice. However, this letter was intercepted by Yeting. He couldn't let Littlefinger learn about the situation in the valley so quickly. He was still waiting for Littlefinger to stage a big show in King's Landing city. On the King's Landing side, King Robert had another mischievous act. He had a sudden idea and took his people out hunting, leaving all political affairs to the hand of the king, Ed Stark. While Robert was out hunting, Ed's investigation into the cause of Jon Arryn's death finally came to fruition. Jon Arryn discovered a fact before his death, that is, Robert's 2 princes and the princess is actually not his biological child. Through the genealogy and history of the major nobles of the Seven Kingdoms and the secret investigation of Robert's illegitimate children, John discovered that no matter what the mother's hair color was, all the children of the Baratheon family had black hair, including 10 of Robert's children. This is the case for several illegitimate children. This is the meaning of his chanting creating vice resilience before his death. However, the 3 children Cersei gave birth to were all blonde like their mother. And their father is actually Cersei's twin brother, Jaime Lannister. Unfortunately, Ed is not a good politician. He adheres too much to honor and compassion, and actually decided to confront Cersei and give her a chance to fly away with her child. Wangs, unfortunately, Cersei is not a fuel-efficient lamp. She took advantage of the buffer time Ed gave her to plan Robert's murder and bribed the Capitol Guard. In the end, what Ed was waiting for was a dying Robert Baratheon who had an accident while hunting. When Robert lay dying on his deathbed, Ed decided to make Robert's eldest brother Stannis the successor. He flatly rejected Robert's younger brother Renly's suggestion to take the 3 children hostage, and then rejected Peter Baelish's offer to accept Cersei and Jaime's 13-year-old son Joffrey as the successor. Ed himself advised as regent. He is indeed a very loyal partner of Robert. Unfortunately, in this Game of Thrones, he not only took the wrong path, but also believed in the wrong person, because he actually asked Littlefinger to bribe the city guard to stand in front of him. His side. This foreshadowed his ending. Chapter 195. While Ed changed the air in Robert's will to Stannis, he did not have the heart to tell the dying Robert the truth. At the same time, Ed also made a backup plan to kill all his family members in 2 days. Return to Winterfell by sea. Since Joffrey is not Robert's biological son, Sansa's marriage is definitely not possible. Then, King Robert died without any surprise. 15 years ago, he raised a rebellion because of the woman he loved and overthrew the Targaryen rule. However, 15 years later, he died of an ignominious murder because of his woman's betrayal. After the death of the king, Prince Joffrey immediately declared his rule. However, Ed clearly opposed it and declared that the real heir should be Robert's brother Stannis. Cersei immediately summoned the king's guard and prepared to arrest Robert, but Robert also summoned the city guard, but the city guard betrayed him without any surprise. No, it was Littlefinger who betrayed him. He did buy the city guard, but he chose the Lannister family instead of Ed, because in his plan the Stark family would not be the final winner. At the moment, in the Prime Minister's tower, Yeting is training Arya in swordsmanship, while Sansa is watching with a smile as usual. However, before the death bell rang on behalf of King 687, he already knew the ending in the Red Castle. There was a sudden boom, and the large wooden door of the small hall behind her was knocked open. Arya immediately turned around, and Sansa also looked over. A king's guard stood under the arch, followed by 5 Lannister guards. He was fully armed, with only the visor of his helmet open. Arya had seen this man when he accompanied the king to Winterfell. She remembered his lowered eyes and rust-colored mustache. He must be Sir Meryn Trant. The red-cloaked guards wore leather vests and mails, and lion helmets on their heads. Arya Stark and Sansa Stark, said the knight, children, follow us. Arya pouted in hesitation, and Sansa, being the older sister, stood up and asked, what do you want from us? Well, I haven't finished writing it today, but it's only 2 chapters, and I will definitely start Harry Potter tomorrow. Your father wants to see you. Sansa took a step forward, but Yeting walked over and held her hand, stopping her. Why didn't Lord Ed send his men instead of the Lannisters? I'm very curious. You, a guard, don't know what is good and what is evil, Sir Meryn said. He was obviously a little afraid of Yeting. This matter has nothing to do with you. My father would not send you here. Arya believed Yeting. She raised her wooden sword threateningly. The Lannister guards laughed at this. Little sisters, put down the stick, Sir Meryn told them. I am a member of the King's Guard, a sworn White Knight. Oh, Lord Elu who killed Lord Iris was also a Sun Knight of the King's Guard. Yeting sneered. Xander is right, I don't want to go with you. Arya agreed. If you don't have the warrant from father, then please come back, Sansa concluded. Sir Meryn Trant's patience ran out. Get them, he told his men, then lowered his mask. The 3 guards walked forward, their chainmails clashing crisply with every step they took. Sansa suddenly became frightened, and she immediately hid behind Yeting. As a result of some training, Arya quickly calmed down her frantic heartbeat. Yeting stepped forward, stood in the middle, and tapped his boots with his wooden sword. "That's it. Lannister lackeys, you can get lost." These words were very insulting, but due to his illustrious reputation, the guards of the Lannister family did not dare to move forward for a while. "Don't you see? This guy only has a wooden sword in his hand and no armor. What are you cowards afraid of?" Sir Meryn scolded from behind. His words gave the guards courage, and they all drew their swords and rushed towards Yeting. Yeting sneered and swung his wooden sword at the leading guard. The wooden sword was so fast that it dazzled people's eyes. There was a click, and, a steel sword fell to the stone floor. "My finger!" One of the guards screamed and held the broken finger. However, when his steel sword hit the ground, the battle was over. Yeting hooked his left foot, and the steel sword on the ground fell into his hands, so he took 2 steps forward and quickly came to the guards. The guards swung their swords at him. "Close your eyes." Yeting said this to the 2 girls behind him because he was about to start killing. Sansa immediately closed her eyes obediently, but Arya boldly opened her eyes and looked directly at the battle in front of her. Seeing Yeting's actions, she realized that when he fought with her on weekdays, he was just having fun. Before their swords could get closer, Yeting dodged to the left. Arya couldn't imagine that people could move so fast. He drew away one sword and turned around to avoid the second one. The second man lost his center of gravity and staggered towards the previous man. Yeting stabbed him with a sword on his neck, and the guard immediately lost his life, and his body fell into a ball with the other guard. The third guard jumped over them and rushed over, swinging his sword to chop off Yeting's head. Yeting lowered his body and stabbed upward quickly. The guard screamed and fell to the ground, and the sword sealed his throat with precision. The remaining 2 guards and Sir Meryn were definitely no match for him. After just a few blows, there were only corpses in front of him. Seeing all her enemies dead, Sansa cried and threw herself into Yeting's arms. She was so scared just now, and only his arms could give her courage. Arya was also a little scared, but she was bolder than her sister after all, but Yeting still touched her head comfortingly. After a while, Sansa asked with red eyes, "Dear Xander, what happened? Why did the Lannister family come to arrest us?" She didn't expect Yeting to give the answer, but Yeting unexpectedly gave her his guess. "I guess Sir Ed had an accident," he replied. "The reason why Sir Ed wanted to send you back to the north these days is because he found out some dangerous facts." He then told the sisters about Cersei. As a new guard, although he was assigned to protect Ed's family, he was trusted enough by Ed to tell him the secret of the Crown Prince's position. However, Yeting was convinced that Ed would probably not be able to confront him. After saying all this, he said in a deep voice, "If someone from the Lannister family comes to the Prime Minister's tower, it probably means that the situation there is not good with Sir Ed. He is probably already a prisoner of the Lannister family." As soon as she said this, Sansa burst into tears. "What should I do? Can you think of a way to save my father?" However, Yeting shook his head and said, "Now we may not be able to protect ourselves. How can we save Lord Ed? In fact, he doesn't want Ed to live, because Ed is indeed very loyal to Robert. If he does, then the Stark family will definitely side with Robert's younger brother or illegitimate son. Yeting also wants to attack Daenerys when Daenerys attacks Victoria. When Stro was working, he was trying to win over the Stark family. Since they can't protect themselves, there is only one choice they are given now, and that is to escape." Chapter 196. Yeting wanted to escape with Sansa and Arya, but for the others, Yeting just gave them some gold dragon coins and tokens, and asked them to go to the free trade bank in King's Landing to escape. Taking just 2 little girls would be much easier than taking a whole bunch of people. Arya originally knew how to ride a horse, and Sansa could ride on a horse with him so that ordinary pursuers couldn't catch them. And as long as they move fast, the most threatening archers cannot be arranged in time. The 7 kingdoms are not Dothraki, and there are not many mounted archers. With the help of the 2 girls, it only took Yeting 2 minutes to put on the full armor. Before leaving, he did not forget to take away Jonaran and the 3 princesses and princes about Robert collected by Ed Stark. Evidence of life experience. In the original work, these evidences no longer exist, and the fact that Prince Joffrey is the son of Cersei and Jaime finally became just some rumors. On the one hand, the Lannister family is dominant, all the evidence has been destroyed, and no witnesses are left. But this time, Yeting will give full play to the role of this evidence. In the stable, Yeting tied Arya to a horse, then mounted his own horse, tied Sansa behind his back, and set off. If you want to escape from King's Landing, the first step is to escape from the Red Keep. At the moment, their horses had just set off when they were discovered by the guards in the Red Keep. However, due to the death of the king and the suddenness of the coup, in order to avoid leaking the secret, the Lannister family did not control the defense of the Red Keep in advance. This gives them an opportunity. Under the shouts of the guards behind them, 2 horses and a carriage rushed through the Red Fort until they reached the city gate. At this time, the Lannister family, which had just controlled Ed Stark, received news from the guards who rushed into the hall. Suddenly there were 2 horses and a carriage in the Prime Minister's tower trying to rush out of the Red Keep. The guards had no time to stop him, and the other party was coming to the door. Moreover, the 2 girls on the horse are the 2 daughters of Ed Stark, and the first one is the Knight of Blue Silver who won the tournament. This news made Prince Joffrey, now the king, and his mother Cersei furious. They hurriedly ordered the men of the King's Guard and the city guard to chase them, hoping to capture them. However, at the moment they have to face a problem: who will fight against Sandor Leaf, the Knight of Blue Silver? Ordinary knights would be picked on by him if they didn't meet him. However, among the people with the strongest martial arts skills, Jaime Lannister, the Kingslayer, went to help his father Tywin Lannister lead the army, and Barry Stan, who was second only to him in the King's Guard. Sermi is not entirely on the side of Lannister. Lannister's subordinate, the Mountain, had his head beaten to pieces by Sandor as early as in the tourney. He is still unconscious, that is to say. The Hound Sandor Clegane stood up and took the initiative to ask for orders to lead his troops to chase the fleeing Prime Minister's family. After the pursuers left, Cersei looked at Ed fiercely and said sarcastically, "It seems that our Prime Minister had already thought of a way out before the coup." Joffrey even cursed loudly. He had hated Sandleaf for a long time, because this guy, his little toy, was no longer infatuated with him, and the magic mountain he sent was also crippled by this guy. When he wanted to use his status as a prince to make this guy submit, he actually joined Ed Stark's command. The relationship between Robert and Ed was excellent, which made him completely powerless and useless. This is already a big hatred for Joffrey, who has a high self-esteem and is narrow-minded. Ed kept silent, but he was relieved because his daughter did not have to be a prisoner like him. On the other side, Yeting had already arrived at the gate of the Red Castle on horseback. Although ordinary guards knew nothing, the captain of the guard who was responsible for guarding the key point of the Red Castle gate had long been bribed by the Lannister family. When he saw the galloping horses in front of him and the carriage behind him, he immediately understood something. "What?" So he shouted loudly and asked the guards to pull up the city gate. The clatter of iron chains sounded, and seeing that the suspension bridge in front of them was about to be raised, despair was written on the faces of Sansa and Arya. However, Yeting remained calm. He picked up the keel-long bow placed by his side, put down the reins with his other hand, and just bent the bow and knocked an arrow on the horse. There was no need to even aim, the steel arrow shot out like a meteor. Yeting's keel bow was very heavy, and with a clang sound, the arrow actually hit one of the iron chains, breaking it into 2 pieces. The next second, the other chain holding up the suspension bridge was also shot open. The suspension bridge fell to the ground with a thud and could no longer be pulled up. Yeting's brave scene frightened the guards at the top of the city. They watched helplessly as the group walked through the gate and walked away without reacting at all. "Zero, please give me flowers." The Red Fort is actually not far from the port. They only need to walk through Go Lane and come to the Mud Road, then proceed to the Fisherman's Square, and then pass through the Riverside Gate, nicknamed the Mud Gate, to reach the dock. In Go Alley, the carriage stopped at the entrance of a free trade bank branch. Due to too many pedestrian roadblocks in the city, the heavy carriage could only slow down the movement. People from the Stark family in the carriage entered the bank one after another, relying on Yeting's token, "They will be hidden." Yeting, on the other hand, moved forward non-stop, knocking over many pedestrians and trampling over many small stalls with his horse hooves. No one dared to stand in front of them, and Yeting fought his way to the mud door. The guards guarding the city gate didn't know what was going on, and they dutifully stepped forward with spears to stop them. However, Yeting drew his horse and ran towards the city gate quickly. His spear was like a dragon, and he immediately broke up the formation of several guards. 2 were stabbed to death and 1 was trampled to death. The remaining people all fled in panic, while Yeting took the opportunity to escape and ascend to heaven. 0.0 When the hunting dogs and their pursuers felt the danger, all they saw was a mess. What made him even more irritated was that someone suddenly started setting fire in King's Landing. The fire started burning in the slums. The cramped slums were full of wooden houses. All of these houses were ablaze with raging fires, and the flames had begun to spread to the outside of the slums. He had to give up chasing and start putting out the fire first. If the fire was allowed to burn, half of King's Landing might be burnt down. This manpower must have been arranged by Yeting in advance to create chaos in King's Landing City and prevent the Lannister family from mobilizing a fleet to block the port of King's Landing City and Blackwater Bay. He really doesn't want to show his true power in King's Landing, otherwise the fire spell and shape-shifting spell will be used, and all the pursuers will be killed. However, in this way, the powerful magical power will be displayed in front of the nobles of King's Landing, so Daenerys's power will most likely arouse their vigilance, and Sansa and Arya may even ask him to save Ed. When the time comes, will he save it or not? Although it is easy to save Ed, the price is probably that the Stark family cannot be used by Daenerys, and it pleases Sansa and Arya, which results in trouble for Daenerys. This is not good. In any case, Yeting finally took Ed Stark's 2 daughters and boarded the merchant ship back to Pentos. The picture shows the map of the Sword in King's Landing City. Chapter 197. Yeting took the 2 daughters of the Stark family across the narrow sea and returned to Pentos. While on the ship, he revealed his identity to Sansa and Arya. When they learned that he was actually a high-ranking member of the Church of the Dragon and a descendant of the Targaryen family, Sansa and Arya were still a little surprised. However, firstly, the 2 girls were still young. When they were born, the War of Robert's Rebellion had long ended, so they had no idea about the significance of Targaryen. Secondly, Yeting himself did not do much in King's Landing. Regarding the matters involving the Stark family, on the contrary, he helped the Stark family a lot and even led them out of the siege, so the 2 girls did not have any resentment towards him, nor did they feel betrayed or anything. Especially after Yeting mentioned that in order to form an alliance with Star's 357k family, the 2 girls became even happier. In their hearts, it is the Stark family that is in trouble now. Yeting's willingness to promote an alliance between Daenerys and the Stark family is entirely to help the Stark family, for the sake of the 2 sisters. This took their relationship a step further, and Sansa was even considering how to marry herself to Yeting in the name of marriage. Unfortunately, after arriving in Pentos, the 2 sisters discovered a rather cruel fact, that is, they had too many competitors, and they were all terrifyingly good. First, the Unburnt, Mother of Dragons, Khaleesi of the Steppes, Lord of the Free Cities, Queen of Mirian, Queen of the Andals, the Rhoynar and the First Men, Ruler of the 7 Kingdoms, All the Realms Guardian, Queen of the 7 Kingdoms, Reincarnation of Azor Ahai, Earthly Representative of the Dragon God, King of Destiny, Stormborn Daenerys. Just by looking at the long list of titles, you can tell that he is a powerful person, coupled with his exquisite appearance, and he is only 2 years older than Sansa. In addition, there is Melisandre, the Bishop of the Dragon God Church, who is respected by countless believers. She is originally very powerful and charming. There is also the Princess of Dorne, Arianne Martell, who is well versed in the art of strategizing and has a childlike innocence. This made the 2 sisters Alexander. However, now the sisters have no time to worry about this anymore, because news came from King's Landing that their father, Ed Stark, was executed willfully by Prince Joffrey. This is a pretty jaw-dropping command. You must know that in today's 7 kingdoms, after the death of King Robert, the princes from all over the country are already ready to make moves, especially Robert Baratheon's 2 younger brothers all left King's Landing in time, and Renly occupied the castle. The Stormlands, the ancestral land of the Lothian family, married into the Tyrell family in exchange for their support, and Stannis also returned to Dragonstone. In this case, the Lannister family wants to keep Joffrey's throne and does not want to make enemies of the Stark family. Especially when the 2 daughters of the Stark family have escaped, imprisoning Ed is equivalent to you held the Stark family hostage, so that whether it was peace talks or alliances, they could slow down the Stark family's powerful power. However, Joffrey killed Ed in order to vent his anger, and you directly forced the Stark family to the opposite side. So Ed's eldest son, Robb Stark, after hearing the news of his father's death, raised troops from the north and prepared to attack King's Landing. The Stark family's allies, Catelyn Tully's natal family, and the Tully family of the Riverlands raised troops to respond. Ally with the Stark family. At the moment, the Lannister family has not captured the Riverlands as in the original book, because Tywin's son Tyrion died in the Eyrie, and the Lannister family lost the excuse to attack the Riverlands. When marching into the valley, it was a pity that the Eagle's Nest city was too dangerous. Although most of the territory in the valley was lost, the Eagle's Nest city still stood in front of the Lannister family like a nail. On the other hand, Yeting, who had mastered the evidence of Joffrey's life experience, spread this evidence widely across the continent of Westeros through Pento's new product, white paper, and sent Stannis to he was Robert's first heir, which caused Joffrey to gradually betray his family. Except for the Lannister family, even many small lords in the king's territory were resigned to the current king's rule. Renly and Stannis proclaimed themselves kings in Highgarden, the capital of the south, and Dragonstone respectively. After the Stark family's troops moved south, the Greyjoy family in the Iron Islands began to prepare for action. However, Euron, the second son of the Greyjoy family, was killed by Daenerys in the sword-drawing ceremony, and his pirate fleet was also scattered. The Iron Islands lost part of their strength, but they still prepared to attack the Stark family and occupy the northern territory. Since then, Westeros has been divided into 5 parts. On Daenerys' side, through Sansa and Arya, they have secretly formed an alliance with the Stark family. Although Ed is Robert's die-hard loyalist, his family is not so loyal to the Baratheon family. Robb promised Daenerys that as long as the other party can help him revenge the Lannister family, then when Daenerys sweeps the Seven Kingdoms, the Stark family will respond in the north and regard her as the Queen of the Seven Kingdoms. However, now is still not the time to counterattack Westeros. Daenerys is ready to wait until the Seven Kingdoms are united, all parties have formed deadly feuds, and a wave of manpower and material resources have been consumed before taking action. Now, she has successfully unified the entire Dothraki grassland and has nearly 100,000 Dothraki warriors. Her next step is to attack Braavos and Slavers Bay and unify the Essos continent. In the period that followed, Daenerys quickly captured Braavos through sea and land attacks, coupled with dragons' air attacks. After more than a year of training, the 3 dragons had 7 or 8. The rice has grown, but they can still sell it for a long time. During this period, Yeting experimented with the new generation of dragon animagus transformation technology on Daenerys. Since this technology originally referred to Daenerys' bloodline, the experiment went extremely smoothly. Si can already transform into a silver dragon in 3.7. Now she has become the real mother of dragons, often soaring in the sky with her 3 dragon daughters. Later, Melisandre and Arianne also successfully transformed into dragon. Melisandre's transformation was a golden red dragon. Her dragon breath was a flame shining with white light. She originally mastered the power from the magic of Arhillar, still has a profound influence on her. And Arianne is a slender purple dragon. Even the 2 girls who stayed in Pentos as hostages, marriage, learned animagus, but they did not become dragons qualifications, but became traditional animagus. The transformation of the 2 sisters, they are all dire wolves, which is also the symbol on the Stark family emblem. Yeting even suspects that the animagus of the Stark family will turn into dire wolves. Chapter 198. Speaking of dire wolves, although Sansa's dire wolf was killed, Arya's dire wolf Nymeria is still alive, and Yeting managed to retrieve her dire wolf. Later, Sansa discovered that she had a power called a shape changer. As a shape changer, she could invade the consciousness of animals or other people and control their behavior. Nymeria, who has an emotional connection with her, is the easiest existence for her to invade and control. After the death of her father Ed, Arya's pursuit of power became even more fanatical. She practiced rapier skills crazily. With her ability, she soon became a master, and she mastered the ability of animagus. Is also faster than my sister. In order to further strengthen herself, at Yeting's suggestion, Arya voluntarily entered the court of Black and White to learn the assassin skills of becoming a faceless man. Definitely, the most powerful thing about the faceless man is his omnipotent disguise skills. After the capture of Braavos, the Dragon God Church definitely destroyed and annexed the House of Black and White, who believed in the thousand-faced God 04, and the method of training the faceless men also became Yeting's bag thing. Yeting discovered that this was actually a kind of acquired disguise magus created by transforming the human body through magic. So far, in the magic system of the Song of Ice and Fire world, only Melisandre's shadow magic, the power of the shape changer and the power of the faceless one can be regarded as Yeting's gains. Most of the other magics the effect is too poor, and it requires the assistance of props, which is completely useless. He has not yet been exposed to the power of the strange ghost and the Night King. However, this is enough. Melisandre's shadow magic allowed him to find a way to give autonomous actions to his shape-shifting creations. The power of the shapeshifter allowed him to easily control ordinary animals, and the faceless man's change ability allowed him to control ordinary animals easily. He still needs further research on the magic of disguise. He believes that after returning to the world of Harry Potter, through research on the bloodline of the disguise magus, he will be able to find a way to create a disguise magus. At this time, he has nothing to do in the world of Song of Ice and Fire. Daenerys and the others already have enough power. It is only a matter of time before they unify the continent of Essos, and the continent of Westeros. The war will continue for some time. It just so happened that now he also missed his friends in the Harry Potter world. So, after recording the current time coordinates of the world of Song of Ice and Fire, he finally opened the time and space door again and returned to the world of Harry Potter with his harvest. Returning to the world of Harry Potter, the time and space door is closed, and Yeting is still in the secret room of Hogwarts Castle. Although he had been in the world of A Song of Ice and Fire for 2 or 3 years, in the world of Harry Potter, only 1 second had passed. However, since his lifespan is now as long as that of a dragon, at the moment he is not much more mature than before, and he is not worried about causing any trouble, which is really gratifying. At Hogwarts, there was exactly 1 month before the final exam, and this month was just enough time for one of his girls to start preparing for Animagus. After becoming Dragon Animagus, even without transformation, their physical fitness and magic power will gradually undergo qualitative changes. In fact, the month of preparing for the Animagus is quite painful. After all, no one is willing to hold a leaf in their mouth for a month. However, in order to gain powerful power, the 3 girls still endured it. After all, it was an opportunity to become a dragon. However, when the 3 girls went to the Forbidden Forest to bury the bottle a month later, they discovered that they were not the only ones preparing to become Dragon Animagus. This made them all a little embarrassed, and they looked at Yeting with confused eyes. It seems like looking at a scumbag. It's no wonder, although the world of Harry Potter can be said to be a kind of parallel world to the Earth, neither Muggles nor Necromancers are as precocious as the medieval world in A Song of Ice and Fire, where girls have to give birth at the age of 13 or 14. But now the 18-year-old Pinello, the 15-year-old Zhongqiu and the 14-year-old Hermione are at the beginning of their love. Even Hermione, who is devoted to studying, has begun to realize the unusual nature of her feelings for Yeting. How could they tolerate other people of the opposite **x staying with Yeting for a long time? But Yeting just said because you 3 are my best friends at Hogwarts and was temporarily fooled. In fact, he himself is the least convinced that there is such a thing as pure friendship between men and women. This time the crisis has passed temporarily. However, Yeting was still quite troubled by this situation. Although he has only returned to the world of Harry Potter for a month, he has already begun to miss the girls in the world of A Song of Ice and Fire. There, he didn't have to worry about being jealous at all. Not to mention the speed at which the girls gave him free money, but his treatment was that he could have **x every night and even be slept with. Whether it was Daenerys, Melisandre, Arianne, or later Sansa, they all allowed him to get whatever he wanted, especially Sansa, who joined at the end, a naive and soft-spoken girl from the aristocracy, but sometimes she was bold. Extremely often unconvinced, the 3 seniors Daenerys, Melisandre, and Arianne started a fierce competition with them. She would try anything they dared, which was an advantage for Yeting. I don't want to think about this anymore. After returning to the world of Harry Potter, he had to go on a vegetarian diet for a month. How could he endure it as he was used to big fish and meat? Now they are still jealous here. I'm afraid you don't know what Yeting has experienced in the past period of time? That was enough experience to transform an innocent little virgin into a super level 667 veteran driver, 2 or 3 years of singing and singing every night. Now he is allowed to have an affair with 3 beautiful girls every day, but it is just an affair. How can he tolerate this? He decided to start with the eldest Pinello. Anyway, she is already 18 years old and will graduate from Hogwarts this year. After graduation, with her ability, she will definitely be able to find a good job in the Ministry of Magic, not to mention her good grades. Yeting has someone in the Ministry of Magic. There is Ms. Amelia Bones, the director of the Department of Magical Law Enforcement, whose status is second only to Cornelius Fudge. There is no need to worry about her not being able to find a good job in the Ministry of Magic. However, Yeting was not prepared for this, because even with Ms. Bones's relationship, Penelope's starting point for joining the Ministry of Magic at the moment was still too low. He planned to let her take it easy until after defeating Voldemort, and with her participation in the fight against Voldemort, her starting point would be quite high. Before that, he could use Pinello to help him open a shop as an excuse to keep her from entering the Ministry of Magic for the time being. Anyway, opening an alchemy props shop in Diagon Alley is also part of his plan. In his laboratory, there are a lot of alchemical test products that have not been processed. Then, wait until Pinello becomes a boss lady in Diagon Alley, he. Plan passes. Chapter 199. After the final exam, the summer vacation came quickly. Before leaving, a storm luckily came to Hogwarts. Taking this opportunity, Yeting took the 3 girls to the Forbidden Forest, took out the Animagus potion, and injected them with a new version of the Dragon Factor potion. In the strong wind and rain, 3 dragon roars soon sounded in the Forbidden Forest. No one knew that 3 dragon Animagus would come to this world. Among the 3 girls, Pinello and Zhongqiu transformed into blue dragons, while Hermione became a silver dragon. She is truly a Ravenclaw girl, and the transformed dragons are all good at magic. However, since it was their first transformation, the girls could only transform into 3 to 4 meter long baby dragons. According to Yeting's experience, with the continuous mastery of the power of the dragon-like Animagus, and the continuous improvement of dragon and human power, integrate, soon, they will be able to transform into young dragons that match their age. After that, their growth rate as dragons will slow down, just like the growth rate of real dragons. However, Yeting asked the 3 girls to promise that unless the situation was extremely urgent, the 3 of them could not transform into dragon privately without Yeting himself. After all, the power of transforming into a dragon is too powerful and too taboo. Before Voldemort is completely destroyed and Yeting himself has not established a certain power, revealing his dragon Animagus identity is tantamount to telling others that they have control over it. Ability to become dragon in batches. This is simply asking for trouble. Fortunately, the power of dragon's feedback alone is enough for them to use at present. The girls obviously found that their physical fitness was improving every day, and their magic power was also significantly stronger. Within a few days, the magic power increased several times. This gave them a new understanding of dragon's power and made them more confident. Then, summer vacation came. After returning to London by train, the 4 of them went their separate ways temporarily. But Yeting knew that they would meet again this summer vacation. Pinello has to wait for the results of the NEWT exam at home, which is like waiting for the score of the college entrance examination, but this score does not determine her university, but her future job. Definitely, now Pinello doesn't have to worry about her future job. Before they parted, Yeting had already sent her an invitation, hoping that she could work for him and become the manager of an alchemy props store in Diagon Alley. Although she had already agreed in her heart, Pinello's reserve as a girl only said that she would go back and think about it and wait until she received the results of the NEWT exam before making a decision. Hermione and Zhongqiu both have activities during this summer vacation. Last school year, when Yeting was teaching them magic, he had already mentioned that he wanted Hermione to try to participate in the International Necromancer Duel competition in July this year. In order to participate in this competition, Hermione worked really hard to practice disarming spells, stun spells, iron armor spells and other spells. For this reason, she even quit the Time Turner, gave up divination classes and Muggle studies courses. Her results are remarkable. Now she can cast some simple spells silently like Yeting, and use variations of the iron armor curse to fly some simple spells with her wand. As she became a dragon-like Animagus, her physical fitness and magic power further improved, which greatly increased her combat effectiveness. Now, she feels that her current self can beat 10 of her past selves. After all, physical fitness is also very important in battle. This greatly increased her confidence in this duel competition. And Yeting also promised her to give her some special training before the competition. On the other side, Zhongqiu also has his own goals. In August this year, the Quidditch World Cup will be held in the United Kingdom, and Yeting has a relationship with Ludo Bagman of the Department of Magical Sports and Sports, allowing her to join the Irish team. Unlike the British government, the British Ministry of Magic is also responsible for managing Ireland's necromancers. However, like the British football team, the British Quidditch team is also divided into the English team, the Scottish team, the Welsh team and the Irish team. In this World Cup, the Irish team is the strongest among the 4 teams. In the original history, the remaining 3 teams, England were defeated by Transylvania, Scotland was defeated by Luxembourg, and Uganda defeated Wales. They lost to 3 motley teams, and only the Irish team played all the way to the finals and even won the championship. Although Yeting believes that Zhongqiu is very strong, if he is paired with some crooked teammates, he might still lose to some miscellaneous troops. It is too difficult to lead 6 pits with one god. Although the World Cup only started in August, the training camp of the Irish team started in early July. Therefore, Zhang Qiu only stayed at home for 2 or 3 days before having to follow Yeting to the training ground of the Irish team. Aedan Lindsay was the original seeker of the Irish team. He was very angry because Ludo Bagman, director of the Department of Magical Games and Sports and former Quidditch star, actually wanted to let a 15-year-old girl instead of him becoming a seeker and participating in the Quidditch World Cup. He felt that Zhang Qiu was purely a connected person, and this scene was a manifestation of the corruption of the Ministry of Magic. His teammates were also quite indignant about this, because this year is the strongest year for the Irish team, and they feel that this World Cup is the one where they have the best chance of winning, and yet the Ministry of Magic actually wants to insert a person with connections. This completely ruined their plans to win the championship. For this reason, they spent a large sum of gold galleons last year to buy 7 newly launched Firebolt broomsticks from Quidditch boutiques. Regarding their opposition, Ludo Bagman himself was definitely furious. He believed that his team members did not respect his request. However, Zhang Qiu stood up. Mandatory orders to prevent domination. I feel that everyone's refusal to join me is not a disrespect for Mr. Bagman, but a doubt about my personal ability. He looked at the players, smiled slightly, and said in a gentle tone, but everyone's the goal is the same, which is to make the Irish team stronger and win the World Cup, isn't it? Seeing Zhang Qiu's cute face, gentle smile, and considerate words, the members of the Irish team, except for Lynch, were instantly healed by her. They had a certain fondness for her and no longer thought she was a friend. Household, so they nodded one after another. Even Bagman felt that Zhang Qiu was right, and the anger in his heart had subsided a lot. When Lin Chi saw this, he almost lost his temper and twisted his nose. How about this? Zhang Qiu continued to suggest, let me and Mr. Lynch compete to see who has better ability as a seeker. How about? If my ability exceeds Mr. Lynch, then how about proving that I am more helpful to the Irish team, and whoever can become the seeker for the Irish team? Everyone except Lynch nodded. Yes, only Lynch shouted loudly, why should I compete with this person? I am a member of the Irish team. However, Zhang Qiu looked at him, tilted his head, and said strangely, don't Mr. Lynch dare to compete with me. Lin Chi, who had always looked down on Zhang Qiu, retorted loudly, who dares to compete with a little girl like you? I will show you that the level of the national team players is not comparable to that of a little girl like you. By then, don't cry to your mother on the court. However, his words aroused some resentment from his teammates. This Lynch was actually so serious with a little girl. Yeting, who was standing behind Zhang Qiu, watched Zhang Qiu turn the situation around with just a few words, and couldn't help but smile bitterly. Zhang Qiu, who became more confident, was really different. It seemed that he would have headaches in the future. Zhang Qiu's character design, you know who is responsible for it. It's time to return to the world of Harry Potter. Please give me monthly tickets, flowers, and rewards. Chapter 200. The duel between Zhang Qiu and Aedan Linkai began under the witness of the team members. The content of the game is very simple. A golden snitch and 2 bloodgears will be released on the Quidditch pitch. The 2 people have to catch the golden snitch under the interference of the bloodgears. Whoever gets the golden snitch first will win. Compared with the official game, they have 12 fewer teammates and opponents on the field to interfere with their flight and observation, but there are no batters to help them resist the bloodgears, and there is no one else to distract the bloodgears, that is, they say that the bludger will always follow them and interfere with their flight. If they are not careful, they may be knocked off the broomstick by the bludger on the spot. The rule was proposed by Lynch. He has experienced many battles and his experience in dealing with bloodgears is much greater than that of Zhang Qiu. Therefore, in such a game, he has a huge advantage. Ludo Bagman originally wanted to refuse such a competition. He felt that just comparing flight speed and skills was enough. Such a competition that obviously tested experience was too disadvantageous for a young girl like Zhang Qiu, but Zhang Qiu himself and Yeting, who was standing behind him, had no objection to this. Zhang Qiu is definitely confident in herself. She has already learned that the Irish team's broomstick is a firebolt. She has definitely seen the excellence of the firebolt, but in terms of performance, the firebolt is far inferior to Yeting, a modified broomstick. Moreover, after she learned to transform into dragon, her physical fitness has been slowly getting stronger. Now she can already exert most of the functions of the broomstick. This is a speed of more than 200 miles per hour. The ultimate speed of the firebolt is 150 miles per hour. It is still unclear whether Aedan Linza can fully exert it. Yeting himself will definitely not comment on Zhang Qiu's decision. He has always believed in the girls he trained, now they are all humanoid dragons. Seeing that Yeting himself had no objections, Bagman stopped talking. Regardless of the fact that he is the director of the Department of Magical Sports and Sports, among the people present now, the one who can really make the decision is Yeting. The scene in the Wisengamot courtroom was still fresh in his memory. This was someone he couldn't afford to offend. So after Bagman announced that the game was ready to begin, Zhang Qiu took out her gorgeous broomstick and took the lead in taking off. Seeing this broomstick that he had never seen before, Lynch curled his lips in disdain. The little girl just has no eyesight, so she just buys some flashy gadgets, such as broomsticks. What's the use of just being beautiful? Professional ones are the best. As he spoke, he mounted his firebolt. The broomsticks of our Irish team are all the latest firebolts of the Nimbus Racing Broom Company, and their designer is the well-known, AECI, broomstick designer Randolph Badmar. You'll lose with just a broomstick. Bagman, who was standing on the ground, saw this and whispered to Yeting, isn't it unfair that both sides of the competition use different brooms? If the performance of Miss Zhang's broom is too poor, it will hold her back, right? It would be fairer if I asked the rest of the Irish team to lend her a firebolt as well. Obviously, he doesn't think much of Zhang Qiu's broom either. However, Yeting just glanced at him and said calmly, the broom Zhang Qiu rides on was modified by me myself. That's it. Bagman nodded with sudden realization. He had heard about this alchemy level for a long time. He was an alchemy master who was admired by Dumbledore and the late Nico Flamel. Although I have never heard that he is also a broomstick designer, it is hard to overestimate the performance of such a masterpiece. So, he cast a pity look at Lin Chi, who was flying in the air. The goalkeeper of the Irish team, Barry Ryan, and the batsman Connolly each took out a box from the warehouse. Connolly's box was opened and there were 2 blood jars fixed with straps inside. He and the other batsman Quinn Gurley opened the strap, each grabbed a bludger, and let them struggle in his arms. Barry Ryan took out a palm-sized ball with a pair of wings from his box. It was the golden snitch. Barry let go first, and the golden snitch immediately started flying everywhere in the stadium, but the 2 seekers still stayed in the air, waiting for orders. After a few minutes, after seeing the golden snitch disappear, Ludo, as the referee, announced that the game had begun. The 2 batters immediately released the blood jars in their arms, and the 2 blood jars collided with the 2 seekers. As soon as the game started, Zhang Qiu and her broomstick shocked the audience. Originally, Lynch wanted to use the firebolt's speed and braking ability to preemptively accelerate away, so that the bludger would target Zhang Qiu, who was closest to them, and he could easily find the golden snitch. This is a victory of experience and broom performance, he thought proudly, and was about to start. However, his opponent is much faster than him. Zhang Qiu, who was wearing a black cloak, instantly turned into a black shadow in front of Lin Chi and flew high. That kind of acceleration is an explosive speed that even the firebolt cannot achieve. And what kind of reaction force must Zhang Qiu endure at the moment while riding such a broomstick? The experienced Lynch immediately realized a fact that was unbelievable to him: his opponent, whether it was a broomstick or himself, might be better than him. That unknown-looking flying broomstick was not as flashy as he imagined. At least in terms of acceleration, its performance was better than the firebolt under his crotch. And its driver, the little girl, is actually not as weak as she looks. Rather, her physical fitness is even stronger than Lynch, a man in his 20s, otherwise she would not be able to survive in such a terrifying situation. Control the broomstick under acceleration. But how is this possible? The opponent is just a connected person, a little girl? However, time did not give Lynch a chance to think about it. The 2 blood jars could not find Zhang Qiu, so they set their target on Lin Chi, who was closest to them. This forced him to immediately drive the firebolt and evade in all directions. As for Zhang Qiu here, she rode her broomstick and instantly accelerated to a high altitude, then stopped instantly, allowing her to hover in the air at low speed and observe the entire situation below. Such instant start and pause movements were something she had never been able to do in the past. Without sufficient physical fitness, such speed changes were enough to make ordinary people vomit blood. However, she was able to complete it very easily. Moreover, having taken the lead, she immediately left the pressure of the bludger to Lynch, Although Lynch tried to lure the bludger to her several times, he relied on his speed advantage and his excellent flight skills. Zhang Qiu never stayed in one place for more than 3 seconds, which forced Lynch to follow her and eat dust the whole time. But he had to do this, otherwise the simultaneous attacks of the two bludgers would be enough to make him lose the energy to find the golden snitch. Fortunately, the opponent did not find the golden snitch either. With this thought in mind, he breathed a sigh of relief and began to concentrate on how to catch up with his opponent and direct the bludger's attack target towards her. After all, the stadium is so big. Unless Zhang Qiu keeps flying upward, she will always be blocked by Lynch. Lin Qi glanced at Zhang Qiu again. This time the girl moved to another place, then slowed down and looked around. She was really cautious. Suddenly, the whistle from Ludo Bagman sounded. The game is over. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel so you are notified of future uploads. You can find the next parts in the playlist visible on the screen or on my channel. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.